Throwaway time. What's your secret that could literally ruin your life if it came out? Well, it's more of a secret to my friends that I've made recently. Some background first. I don't like being touched or hugged, and I'm incredibly uncomfortable with intimacy in general. When I was in the 8th grade, a bunch of girls in my class convinced me they had a friend who fancied me. They said she had seen me somewhere and thought I was cute. Faked her MSN account and they talked to me every night for a few months, invited me out to the movies, and, obviously, didn't show up, then revealed to the whole grade that I had been tricked into having an imaginary girlfriend. I was mocked viciously by everyone in the grade and ever since then I can't really trust women. I also can't believe that a girl may have feelings for me. Even when they explicitly tell me they have feelings for me, I can't help but feel like they are trying to trick me. It's caused a lot of insecurity, and I can't get attached to people easily. I'm terribly afraid to text or message people first because I'm convinced I would be annoying them. What's worse is that when I think about it, I know it probably isn't true, but I can't help but feel like it is. Even though it was grade 8, it was around the time when attraction to women was just starting to get real, so to be hurt at a time as delicate as that has really done some damage. The secret of course is that I had been dumb enough to be tricked. As you might suspect, the whole thing has left me afraid of being vulnerable. To have this found out by my newer friends, as in, university friends, would put me in a really uncomfortable place. I probably wouldn't be able to be their friend anymore. Thanks for reading. You're the first people I've told about what this event has actually done to me. Edit. I know people still read this thread, so I felt I should come back and that I owed people an update. I've since met such a fantastic woman, someone who makes me incredibly happy. I love her very much, she loves me, and she's helping me get used to the idea of feeling valuable and trusting people, or at least one person. She's the best thing that's happened to me in a long time, maybe ever. I'm glad I got to come back to this post and finish it off with a happy ending. To all the people in the comments who were kind to me or who shared their own similar experiences, you're always valuable and someone will notice. Buried comment, but here goes. Not life ruining, but makes me feel like shit every time I think about it. As I've told Reddit before, I have a blind brother. When we were young, I used to get so frustrated at all the extra attention he received and how I had to be more responsible with my sibling than my peers. So, when my brother and I would go play, go to the store, or just generally go anywhere without adults, I would abandon him somewhere unfamiliar to him. Then, I would stand off quietly and watch the anxiety set in as he tried to figure out where he was and what was going on. Also, I was really intelligent as a child and knew that was my ticket to attention. When I would help my brother with his homework, I would teach him all the wrong answers so that I could continue being the smarter sibling. Today, my brother is my best friend. He goes to college and lives by himself. He's become one of the most intelligent men I've ever met. I'm trying to make it up to him now by being the best big sister ever, but I still feel so guilty at how I found him to be a burden when I was a kid. Edit. Update. I immediately called my brother after posting this and caught him while he was walking to a study group. I told him about my guilt and he laughed. He understands how frustrating it must have been. He told me that all of the good things I have done as a sister completely overshadow anything bad I did, and that he loves me more than anything. I'm glad I spoke with him, and I encourage others on here to talk to someone if they can. I faked having a chronic pain condition for 5.5 years. In order to not have to attend middle school and high school, I was placed on a homebound program, not homeschooling, and allowed to study at my own pace from home. I was able to fool a team of medical professionals, my family, my teachers, and my friends into believing that my symptoms were real. Also, I racked up over $100,000 in medical bills for my family. That's just what the insurance didn't cover. During those 5.5 years, I did not realize the extent of the medical bills until late into my life, and it was one of the main reasons I decided enough was enough. Upon graduating from high school and getting accepted into a good university, I decided that it was time for my pain to go away. No one has questioned the fact that my symptoms vanished overnight. My medical team attributed it to the fact that I was nearing the end of puberty. What I did was a douchebag thing, and my family is continuing to drown in debt from medical bills. I plan to pay them back someday. I simply started the hoax because I was a 12-year-old who absolutely loathed middle school. I attempted to end the lie at the beginning of every school year, but eventually fell back into saying my pain prevented me from attending school. Today I feel horrible about what I did, and I desperately want to tell everyone that it was a lie, but I know that I cannot, because I will never gain credibility back again. Edit. I didn't expect such a huge response. I fully expected this to get downvoted to hell. Those of you who are saying I'm a douchebag, you are right. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I do want to address a couple things. This occurred over a decade ago. I have since graduated from undergrad and law school. I'm currently an associate at a large law firm, and I'm in a position to pay my parents back. I have tried many times to pay my parents back the $50,000 they already have paid off. I have also tried to get them to let me assume the remaining $50,000 in medical bills. They refuse to let me. My hope is that they will allow me to help them with their retirement. I think some ground is being made in those negotiations. I do not intend to stiff my parents. I truly do plan on repaying them some way. I came very close to committing a school shooting. I was picked on a lot in high school. I think it was because I tried so hard to be cool and everyone saw right through it. There were these 4 cowboy jock types that gave it to me the worst. After being publicly humiliated and beaten in front of a girl I liked as she laughed/cheered, I decided that none of it was worth it anymore. I had no support at home, being an only child, and having parents that worked constantly, and cutting and burning myself didn't make me feel better anymore. So I got my dad's handgun out of the gun safe. He uses the same combo for everything, the idiot, and brought it to school with me the next day. I can't adequately describe to you guys how ready I was to kill these 4. I had absolutely no fear or doubt in my mind. I wanted nothing more than to show everyone what happens when you push someone over the edge like they did. I had the gun tucked in my waistline. I was wearing this baggy pair of cargo shorts that I wore a couple times a week that day. I remember walking towards the cowboys table, so got 'em ready for it to be over, when the gun fell out of my waistline, down my left short leg, and made the loudest faking sound as it hit the cafeteria floor. I tried my best to grab the gun real quick, but people saw what it was and screamed, and one of the instructors tackled me to the ground. They eventually concluded that I had brought the gun to school to impress people with badassery and had no intention of using it. I was expelled and sent to live at a youth ranch in Idaho until I was 18. I did have the intention of using it though. I was going to kill all of them. I'm 24 now, and I still think about it all the time. I have not recovered from high school. I'm still terrified of people in general, and avoid having relationships because of what I fear I'm capable of. I'm not looking for pity. I know that what I did was wrong. It just feels good to tell the story. Thanks Reddit. TLDR, I attempted a school shooting. Background: I'm a guy in my late 20s who was taken into care aged 7. Everyone around me already knows that I was brought up by foster families because I had a shit early childhood. I deliberately keep it vague and say stuff like I'd rather not go into it so that people will just assume I was abused in some way and they'll stop asking about it. The truth is that for the first 7 years of my life, I was brought up as a girl by my psycho birth mother who really wanted a daughter and didn't let the snag of giving birth to a boy stop her from trying to raise one. She was a pretty successful professional in a legal field, not entirely sure what, and had me via an anonymous sperm donor from a fertility clinic. She found out I was a boy at a late ultrasound and then moved across the country, gave birth to me at home, and continued to move about until I was 5 or so. It was just the 2 of us all my life. We had contact with other people, of course, but they rarely got very close. I had lots of friends, but was always supervised. I found out way after that my mother's strong puritanical Christianity was a lie. She used to explain why she was so strict about me being private and never letting anyone see me get changed or anything. I just accepted all of this as fact having never been told anything different. I was sent to a religious school for girls and had a really great childhood. I was a bit of a tomboy and played with Lego and toy animals rather than dolls and stuff, but that's not unusual and no one ever questioned I was a girl, even me. I knew about men and women, but had never really seen much of naked people. My mother never ever spoke to me about it, but I kinda had the impression that when I grew up and got boobs and stuff, my dick would kinda fall off or something, and I would be a woman, and other kids would keep their dick, and they'd be men. I dunno, to be honest, I never really thought about it. Anyway, I carried on with my happy girlhood and had a bunch of friends and everything was great until I was 7 and a teacher accidentally spilled a cup of hot coffee over me at school. The liquid soaked through my clothes and was scalding me, so the staff immediately stripped me out of my dress and underwear to get the hot coffee away from my skin. And then they found out. The cops were called, and I got taken to speak with who I guess would be social services. They asked me a bunch of questions about life at home and stuff. Meanwhile, my mother was taken in for questioning too. She refused to acknowledge me as male and insisted I was her daughter because she was, now, delusional and stuff. I wasn't allowed to go back home, but got put with a foster family and went through loads of therapy and stuff. The worst part was that literally overnight, I lost everything: my mother, my home, all my toys, all my clothes. I moved school, so lost all my friends. They cut all my hair off and told me I wasn't a girl anymore. It was really traumatic. The first foster home wasn't that great. They had 3 boys already, and going from a sheltered religious only child upbringing to a rough and tumble testosterone filled environment was really difficult. They tried to force me to be masculine, and I was just too confused about what they wanted. Anything girly was reprimanded, and I felt so lost and alone because nothing I did was right. I tried to commit suicide when I was 11 and again at 13 because I didn't feel I fitted in anywhere. After the second attempt, they moved me to a different foster family who were awesome. I consider them to be my parents. They actually stood up for me. The first thing was that they let me grow my hair from when I got taken into care. They buzzed my hair short, and I hated it. They always had to hold me down and do it forcibly while I was crying and fighting. My new parents flatly refused to do it and said that loads of boys had long hair. They also let me quit karate and football and take up swimming and jazz dance since I'd been in care. No one had ever stood up for my right to choose what activities to do or how to dress before. It was amazing. In the end, I came out of it with a pretty healthy gender identity. I'm a guy, but not the most butch guy ever, but I'm fine with that. I went through school and got my degree and have a pretty good job and an amazing, supportive wife. Everything looks great, but I can never speak about my early childhood and how I grew up as a little girl. TLDR, I'm a guy and let people believe I was raised in care because I was abused when in fact I had a great childhood, except that my mother tried to raise me as a girl. Edit. Holy crap, I never expected such a response. Have finally remembered the password I used for this account and am answering any questions I find. Thank you, Reddit. I used to be a police/fire/911 dispatcher, but had to quit because it nearly made me suicidal. I actually had thoughts, but had to drive 40 miles to go to a center/hospital where no one knew me for help. I have nightmares about a few calls I took where the caller killed themselves, shot someone else, or passed away on the phone with me. To this day, a few years after resigning, I still can't listen to a phone ring or sirens go off without having a mild panic attack. I'm fairly sure it's a form of PTSD, with flashbacks, nightmares, panic attacks, and an inability to function sometimes, but I'm embarrassed and scared to tell my fiance or go to a doctor for it. I know there are soldiers out there with real PTSD that deserve help far more than me. I'm very good at hiding it though. I also sometimes wait until my fiance goes to sleep, and I will then go sit and pretty much cry for several hours. It's hell. TL. Doctor, I exhibit a lot of the symptoms of PTSD, but I'm scared to get help for it because I don't think I deserve to be diagnosed with something like this, as in my mind, I was never in any real danger. Edit. 1 year later, for those of you who still message me about this, no, I did not seek help for my problem. Soon after I made this post, my fiancée left me, citing the fact that I made her miserable. That was a huge blow, because it meant that I was effectively homeless, since I wasn't able to afford rent in our shared home. I was then forced to quit my job, move several thousand miles away, and live in a cot in my grandmother's house. I found that I was massively depressed, homeless, jobless, overweight, and severely suicidal. My ex-girlfriend refused to help, and I was utterly, sincerely, totally, alone. But I fought. I couldn't afford treatment, so I went ahead and began exercising my body and exorcising my demons. I fought long and hard to eat right, to not have the urge to end my own life, and to be someone. I ended up losing nearly 120 pounds, getting into the best shape of my life, and kicking my depression in the ass. Today, 1 year later, I'm normal weight, I have a gorgeous new girlfriend, and I recognize that I needed help. So, future reader, let this be a lesson to you. The things you try to hide, the things that can and will destroy you, if they get out, will destroy you eventually. Face your demons. Fight, fight, fight. Edit 2. The 19th of September 13. Yes, I still check this account. Thank you to whomever gifted me Reddit Gold. I appreciate it sincerely. Second, and most important of all, the reason I check this account is because it is still generating amazing comments to my inbox. I really do love all of them, and I'm happy to have helped. I'm fighting to get to a better place in my career, and I'm living a very healthy and happy life now. I'm working harder and more focused than I've ever been, and I'm currently down 130 pounds. I ran my first 5k a few months back, and my nightmares and panic attacks have gone away totally. Again, never take the easy way out, folks, because there just isn't one. I'll leave you with my favorite quote: do not by any means destroy yourself, for if you live you may yet have good fortune. But, all the dead are dead alike. C.S. Lewis. Thank you all. Edit 3. The 6th of December 14. We are engaged. For those of you asking how I am, or giving me encouragement via the PMs, a sincere thank you. There are days where I'll log into this account, see an orange red and use the wishes inside as my secret fuel to get through a tough day. I'm down 150 pounds total now, and I jog, bike, hike, and find whatever activity I can to keep myself occupied. I've got a wonderful job in a field that I love, doing all kinds of interesting research, and I'm now the guy in the office that brings in the donuts on Fridays. It's a funny turnaround. Sometimes, my old life seems like it was a bizarre and hazy bad dream, to use the washed up phrase, but I can't ever forget that it was real, because there are so many lessons that my time in that dark place taught me, and so many lessons I feel like I want to share with others. Finally, there are some things that I never shared with you folks about my story, such as when I mentioned initially that I was living with my grandmother. As tough as that was, 2 months after I moved in, she was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I helped with her care until the very end. I know I had my problems, but when a dying person that loves you with all of their heart tells you that no matter what, they're proud of you, you can't help but smile and carry on through anything. She passed away a year ago today, hence this post. It's kind of a thank you to her too. My fiance tells me that I should write a book about this whole thing, so that's what I've started to do. Might as well put that English degree to use, right? I hope someday you'll all get the chance to read it, because so many of you helped to inspire it. Again, thank you all, from the bottom of this heart of mine. Thank you all. Edit 4. The 5th of July 16. We just bought a house. I honestly can't believe it. I sat down in the bare living room last night, no furniture yet, and I looked down at my wedding ring, looked around at the house, and broke down into tears. No one in the world, save for you kind folks, and my wife, know how close I was to ending my life. How much I thought that I was nothing. All this work was worth it. It's always worth it. I just wanted to say hi again to everyone. I've been getting quite a few PMs lately, and they are still the most beautiful thing to me. There are so many people all over the world that have similar stories and have come through it all better than before. I guess that's the point of this whole post. Life is what you make of it, and no matter what situation you find yourself in, or what setbacks you face, the only real constant to the whole messy thing is that you haven't failed until you decide that you failed. If you get knocked around and you find yourself face down, miserable, lonely, and with nothing left, it doesn't have to be the end. It's a weird and funny concept to many people who feel like it can't ever get any better. Trust me, I know what it feels like, but you are truly in control of your own destiny. If you keep hitting dead ends and dark paths, don't give up. Never give up. So, my wonderful friends from all around the globe, I love you. Thank you joining me on this journey once more, and remember that the journey isn't always easy, but if you want it to be meaningful, that journey is always worth it. Stay tuned. Edit 5. The 24th of December 2017. Merry Christmas. I wanted to stop by and tell you all that we are still doing great. 5 years later, and it looks like the changes I made an effort to create in my life are permanent. Those changes are not holding fast because of me, it's because of the support system I set up around me. My habits, my hobbies, etc. all keep me occupied and mindful. Yes, I still have bad days, and yes, I still have days where I need to make a conscious effort to be positive, but it's always so worth it. I really just wanted to come in and tell every last one of you that 5 years ago I was alone on Christmas Eve, crying on a ratty couch, watching A Christmas Story alone, wondering what life is all about. Today, I'm sitting here with my wife, a pair of dogs, a fire in our house, contemplating how close I was to the end and how I can help folks in the same spot right now. You, if you're reading this, you really do fit in somewhere. I know you do. Out there, in this great wide universe, is someone or something that needs you right now. It might be hard to see it, and you may think it's impossible to ever find it, but you just need to try. Try for yourself, your family, or for that someone that could use you and what you'll bring to the world right now. I know that even at your lowest point, you can still be a beacon to other people. I know, because some of you, even at your lowest points, have dropped me quick messages to just say thanks, and they always make me smile. They always help. There's some really amazing people in this world. Merry Christmas, all. P.S. Yes, I'm still writing that book. Edit 6. The 20th of December 19. Merry Christmas to the return. A big, warm hello to everyone who's reading this. I just wanted to stop in and let you know that things are still going great with my wife and I. I get messages from many of you on a pretty regular basis, and it's probably the highlight of my week to go back and read them. Some of the messages are beautiful words of encouragement, some are people telling me their own story, and some are asking me for updates. The one thing that strikes me about all of the voices that reach out to me is that they're all positive and all part of the same human experience. When it's all stripped away, right down to the bare black and white letters of a Reddit message, we all have the same fears and hopes. We all seek that motivation to be a better person. I can't truly say that life since my turnaround above has been easy, but it's so nice to know that others are in this big goofy thing called life with me. You're not alone. But, onto the real reason I'm here. Don't give up. That's the only message I can spread to you. Don't ever give up. You never know when the next opportunity or amazing adventure will appear around the corner, or what wonderful experience will coax you out into the world. Merry Christmas, everyone. We love you all, and again, you're not alone. P.S. That book is kinda finished. Anyone know a good publisher? Lol. Merry Christmas Reddit. Thank you, again, for helping to save my life. I mean it. You're all a part of it. I love you for it. I finally had to edit out some prior edits to comply with the 10,000 character limit. I'm only even posting this because this thread has taken off so far that nobody will even see it. Going to get it off my chest anyway. Throughout my teen years, I had a lot of sex with my sister and even more sex with my brother. It started with my sister. We are a year apart, in our early teens, and was only mutual oral and hand jobs. Went on for about 2 years, maybe once or twice a month. I started getting scared that it would turn into something more serious, and that we would eventually fuck. I was certain that if that happened, she would get pregnant with a deformed baby, so I decided on both of our behalves to end it. Then my brother and I started up. At first, just oral, but eventually turned into full-blown, unprotected, come into each other's as butt faking. We faked each other at least once a week for 4 years, until I moved out and went to college. I didn't feel the same trepidation as with my sister, because there was no risk of pregnancy. I consider myself bisexual, not because I'm a closeted gay, but because I'm sexually attracted to both genders. I watch straight porn, gay porn, lesbian porn, solo guys, solo girls, mixed group play, it all gets me off. Today, myself, my sister and my brother are in our 30s. We are all in monogamous marriages, and all 3 marriages have produced children. My sister knows about me and my brother knows about me and my sister. I've never told anyone else, and I have no idea if they've ever told anyone, because we've never discussed it since it ended. We all still love each other and get along. I'm a city councilman, a business owner, and an active member of the LDS Church. I disagree with the church's stance on sexuality, but I never voice this disagreement. If anyone ever knew this, it would literally undo everything I have achieved in my adult life. There is no way I could verify or prove the authenticity of this without jeopardizing myself, so you'll just have to believe or disbelieve me. That's your prerogative. I might hit close on my browser before I press post. If you're reading this, I at least had the balls to anonymously get it off my chest. TLDR had consensual oral sex with my 1-year younger sister repeatedly for 2 years, then oral and anal sex with 2 years younger brother for 3 years. All 3 of us are now in monogamous heterosexual marriages with children. I'm a city councilman, a business owner, and all of my immediate relatives including myself are active Mormons. Edit, because it's been asked and answered nearly a billion times. I have no idea if my sister and brother also faked each other. What I do know is that my brother knew about my prior messing around with my sister, and my sister found out that my brother and I were faking each other about a year before I moved out. After I left for college, they both lived at home for another 2 years, so I suppose anything is possible. While we all get along just fine, neither of them has ever discussed that part of the past with me since the day I moved out. I don't regret what happened, nor do I feel guilty or ashamed of it, but out of respect to each of them, their spouses and their families, I've never brought it up. If one of them ever brings it up with me, I will be happy to discuss it, and if it seems appropriate, I might inquire whether the 2 of them ever messed around with each other. When I was 14, my parents had just started getting a divorce as my dad had had a mental breakdown and was treating me like shit. I was off school sick with mono. I got deeply depressed as my whole life had changed. Was self-harming on an almost daily basis at some points, at home all alone every day. Didn't trust anyone in my family as they hadn't believed me when I told them about how my dad had treated me, until my mum one day came home early and he had me backed into a corner screaming how I was a little cunt who should never have been born ECT. One person who gained my trust was my older male cousin. He lived nowhere near me, but chatted to me online. One day he said he knew I was self-harming, that he could just tell from how I talked, and that he had been there himself. Over a month we talked almost daily. I'd vent and he would make me feel better. I cut back on the amount of cutting I was doing. He helped talk me down from suicide. One day I told him how much he has helped, and that I don't know what I would do without him. The next day he tells me he has always liked me and wants me, but if I don't have any interest then we have to stop talking to each other. I was weirded out, but said to him I hadn't thought of him like that, but I wanted to keep talking. I needed to. He was literally the one person in my life during that time that I felt cared about me and that could get me through this. It escalated. He kept pushing. One day I cut again and needed to talk to him. I did. It ended up as either no chatting or give him something he wanted, a bit of sabah. So I did, and then I cried and told him about how shit I felt about life, and he made me feel better. This cycle continued for a bit. Then one day he came down and visited. I was 14, female BTW. He was 19. I'd looked up to him my whole life. He said he wanted to see me. I met up with him. I thought to chat. Instead he sat in the back of his car with me and started kissing me. I pulled back. He stopped asking me how I was doing mentally. I broke down, and he hugged me. Then he kissed me again. I kissed him back a bit. I hate myself for it, but at the time I was so desperate for him to not go away, and he would, if I didn't do this. He tried to get me to go further. I didn't want to. He kept trying to put his hand up my skirt. I said no, and kind of froze. He literally ripped off my panties, tore the sides, and threw them on the floor. I said no, and moved to the other side of the car. He grabbed my wrist, and tried to force my hand down his pants. I was silent and just pulled back as hard as I could. My brain was in meltdown. I hated every second of seeing him, but needed him in my life. I was breaking apart. He didn't manage to get me to touch him. I was welling up and he stopped. I had a bruised wrist the next day. Anyway, he got on top of me and humped my leg, though his jeans. I just lay there looking away and pressing on my cuts through my sleeve. He came in his pants and got off, went back to the front, and told me he'd take me home. I cried like a little bitch that night, stayed in the shower forever, felt sick, and yet when he texted me later I told him that I had cut myself again, and that my dad had called the house, and he comforted me. Next day he shows up at my house, lived with the doors unlocked back then, so just came in, tried to go further again. This time I was just numb. I felt dead inside, so betrayed and yet loved by him. I went with it, but completely unenthusiastically. He stopped before anything happened below the belt and said I think this was a mistake and stopped and left the house. I felt so used and dirty and alone, and yet wanted him to come back, just so I had somebody in my life that I knew needed me. I hate myself. For years I would feel sick if someone said his name. I've only seen him twice since, both at family gatherings. First time he hugged me, I couldn't pull back as there were like 10 people in the room. I had the urge to scream though. Second time was last year. He dared to come and sit next to me at a wedding reception. I wanted to fucking stab him. He was sitting there laughing and joking right next to me, talking to my mum and me, and trying to get a hug. I wanted to scream out in front of everyone what had happened. Never did. Just said I was ill and went back to my hotel and cried. To this day I don't know if I was in the wrong or if I was abused or what. I just know this is the one thing in my life that haunts me, that I hate myself for, and that if I could change one thing, it would be this. I'm feeling so sick just typing this out. I don't even know what to do right now. The reason this would ruin my life is because I doubt anyone would believe me. I had a psychotic episode last year. My family would be split in two, and it's already because of me. My mum lost her husband. I couldn't make her choose between me and the family. I can't bring myself to type it out again, so copy/pasted the relevant parts from the other place I posted this. I can't promise coherence. Even after all these years it still cuts deep, and I'm probably going to wind up rambling, like I did the first and only other time I talked about it. 10 years ago, when I was 7, my parents worked shift work in the military. Since their schedules didn't match up very well, it wasn't uncommon for them both to be working a 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift. As such, I had a babysitter. She was an old friend of my mother's wonderful woman. She was the type who seemed to have the compulsion to feed everyone who came through her door. Matronly is the word I'm aiming for, I think. Anyway, she and her husband, along with their adopted daughter, were Christian. I tagged along to church with them a couple times, but it only furthered my atheistic leanings, which had already been in place. In time I politely turned down the offer to accompany them, instead staying home with their adopted son. At the time he was about as old as I'm now. We shared similar interests, namely, playing Super Nintendo games and listening to loud music. Since the house was free of anyone to complain about it, we did so with abandon. I honestly don't remember how it started anymore. To the best of my recollection, he asked me to go with him into the bathroom to show me something. I was 7, naive, and he was a cool guy I looked up to. Naturally, I followed without question. The first time, he showed me what masturbating was. At the time, of course, it was just how to get your thing hard, but whatever. A few times after that, we'd do that when the others left, then go back to our gaming. Something always clawed at me, the feeling that something was wrong. He was older than me, though, and he was cool. It must be what the cool kids did, right? Slowly but surely, though, he escalated things. At first it was mutual masturbation. I still didn't really know what was going on, but I jerked him, and he jerked me. It couldn't stop there, of course, and eventually built to him blowing me. After that happened a few times, he wanted me to return the favor. Again, I still didn't really grasp what was going on, but I tried. I hated the taste, and wound up refusing. After that happened a couple times, he would force me. I just started to go blank, I guess. I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't think or feel. I just let him use my mouth until he was satisfied and would jerk into tissue to finish himself off. This went on for a while until my babysitter began to grow suspicious. He had made me promise not to tell anyone about our special time, and at that age a promise was something you didn't break for anything. That said, I just denied anything being wrong anytime my babysitter asked. Eventually she grew too concerned and, despite knowing nothing for certain, had my mom find an alternative sitter. Since then, he's gone through therapy. He admitted to having issues, apparently, but never spoke a word of what actually happened. I'm pretty sure it faked me up good, honestly. I never really properly appreciated the deep scars sexual abuse leaves on a victim until I looked back on my life with that in mind. I buried it for years and tried to pretend I was normal, but I was definitely different. I was a lot more melancholy and have had a few streaks of depression. I've never really been too certain of my sexuality. I'm scared to death of sex, honestly, and I think it's because part of me is afraid that I'll wind up just as abusive as he was. It helped a lot, opening up to my girlfriend. It doesn't haunt me like it used to, and I don't always feel like such a freak. It's helped strengthen our trust, and she's agreed to take things as slowly as I need to be comfortable. I've since stopped feeling so totally emasculated, as well, and it's almost something of a joke to me now. I know, rape isn't funny. The thing is though, you've gotta be able to joke about it, even if only to yourself. If you can laugh at something, you can move past it. I can't help but chuckle when I'm arguing with someone, and they tell me to suck a dick or something to that effect. I can laugh at my own pain, so I can move past it. I don't think I'll ever be who I might have been if it hadn't happened, but I'm okay with that. Realistically, I can't even say I'd change it if I could. I'm fit, intelligent, in love and generally happy with my life. It was terrible, yes, and traumatic, but at least I know this path can lead to happiness. Take the evil you know, right? Anyway, that's my story. It's long, incoherent, and doesn't really have a proper end, but take it how you will. TLDR, played Nintendo, sucked dick, everything turned out okay. It wouldn't ruin my life per se, because there are people in my life who are aware of this, but I did try to kill myself once, at my college. Was going to swallow I think Tylenol and a handle of vodka, intending to induce organ failure plus alcohol poisoning. I ended up about to swallow, but the cheap alcohol made me so aware of my actions that I spit it out and ran to my friend's room. I stole the alcohol from him, and it's the only time I've knowingly stolen something to apologize. This was maybe 2 years ago. I ended up having to take a year off and was forced to explain the situation to the adults in my life. For the first time, they found out that I had been sexually assaulted by my older brothers for about 5 years, and that I had been suffering from depression for about 9 years. They did not understand. Didn't understand how I could be broken up over something that happened years ago, convinced that I was just trying to weasel myself out of my dream college, or that I'm too stupid to handle it. And when I finally convinced them to let me see a shrink, all they spoke about was how pointless therapy was, and wanted to know how long this would last. I ended up returning to, and then leaving college again, once again due to depression. Now the verbal abuse that I've faced growing up has increased tenfold. Almost every day is some sort of argument, with me hearing about how I faked up my life, and that I'm a jackass and a fool. I desperately want to leave, but I have nowhere to go. I have no job and no money, so I can't afford an apartment or therapy. I'm so tired of being mistreated, and I want to be free, but I'm trapped in this hellhole. This thread is most likely dead by now, so I just wanted to get this out in the open, since I haven't really been able to speak to people about this for months now. I'm sincerely afraid that I'll never be able to become the man I want to be because I'm too busy trying not to slip back into a depressed state. As long as I avoid doing anything slightly challenging or thinking for too long, I can stay neutral. If anyone does read this and knows of something I can do to get away, please let me know. Thank you. Edit. Thank you to everyone who has sent positivity my way over the past year or so. Update. I'm back at my dream college, hoping that this time I can make it through. I seek therapy with a delightfully quirky Jewish lady, and having that stability there is so useful. It's going to be a long ride for me, and I don't know how my future will look, but I'm in so much better of a place than I was then. Seriously though, thank you again, all of you, for the support and the kind words. It became too much to respond to every person, but I appreciate everyone reaching out to me nonetheless. Close bracket. 21 years ago, I was assigned to a DMAT. I was a young man and full of life inside. We handled some pretty bad emergencies. There was one event that killed me inside. We flew into one dispatch and knew it was bad going in. Fatalities and level 1 trauma patients. Unknown how many, and no full situation. So we are flying, in gearing up for the patients, and securing any hazardous material leaks or fires. We get on scene. We find 2 expired, 1 alive with really bad injuries. We were used to that, and trained to deal with it. I was carrying gear back and forth securing any leaks I could find. We did not know if there were any other occupants in the vehicle. Part of my task that day was to make sure, since I was the rover. When I got to one side of the auto, checking what was left of the cabin for other patients or bodies, I seen a child of about 4, trapped under the vehicle. I called for the other merts, asking for a crush kit. There was no child seat in the auto. No one was wearing safety belts, which was common, and many people were ejected from wrecks. Nothing in my training ever prepared my 25-year-old mind for what I saw. A child's eyes looking up at me then around. I seen help me and fear in them. Even though that small person was dead essentially, I still, as always in the worst cases, had hope for life and fought for it. The child was smeared under the car. All that was left was the head pretty much. The pressure of the auto kept what blood was there in the brain. How the head was alive for so long haunted me. I resigned the next day. I will not let someone hurt, suffer. I took an oath and meant it. I resigned because I lost all empathy for other humans that day. I do not feel suffering whatsoever. I'm dead inside. I've been married 4 times. Each time, they cannot handle me not showing any emotion. I can run through the proper words, but they realize I simply do not mean it. You might think I'm an unhappy or depressed man. No, I'm not unhappy. You might think me angry. I'm not angry or a sociopath. I'm not. I'm just indifferent to feeling emotions. The head shrinks reported I'm not dangerous to myself or others. They wanted me on drugs. None worked. So for the last 10 years, I have simply just lived and have done my best, being a good person, even though I can give a shit about others or myself. This thread is sad. I have a few things I could add to the pile. I'm a guy. For context, my memory from my childhood at my father's house isn't always clear. I know some of what happened, but it's like looking through frosted glass, just an outline. Anything dealing with my mother, however, is very vivid. I have vivid flashes of my older girl cousin teaching me how to have sex at my dad's house when I was about 4. That's the only thing I remember clearly. My mother has no idea about these gaps in my memory, and I haven't told her about it even though we are close. My father and I have always been distant for some reason. He treated me like I was out of place, and I felt it. When I was 11, he got drunk on Christmas Eve and hugged me and told me we were family. He ground himself into me, and I excused myself to my room. He followed and unlocked my door, push pin trick, when he thought I was asleep, and kissed my mouth and rubbed me. This was the only time I felt loved by him. A year later he cut off contact for 5 years, while we continued living in the same town. I believe my lack of memory is because he abused me as a child. I'm scared to remember it, but since I can remember, I fetishized him sexually in my head. Since reconnecting, I've come out to him and nothing has been mentioned. We still remain distant, but I fight feelings of attraction and hate for him every day. I want to remember my childhood, but I'm terrified I'm wrong and have no justification for the feeling that I have. Nobody in my life understands the disdain I have for myself. I will sit for hours in my alone time and pick myself apart. I put on a good front in front of everyone, but I hate everything about myself. My voice, my body, my hair, my lack of talent. I could list things for hours. If anybody knew that I felt this way, I'm sure a big deal would be made, and I would hate myself even more for inconveniencing them. They all think I'm so nice and stuff, but it's only compensation. I had a friend who was 12 when I was 9, and when we hung out we would play his games. He would have sex with me and take pictures, telling me he would show them to everyone if I told. This went on for 2 years, until I put a stop to it. Turns out he was never going to tell anyone, because he would be caught too. He was an emotional manipulator, threatening to tell, shaming me, stealing when he wanted to. I still can't classify it as abuse, because we were so young, and I consented for 2 years. Because of him I can't do anal sex without flashbacks. Only blow. I feel responsible for letting this all happen. This all brings me to my most shameful secret. I've replaced my cutting with having sex with older men. I will only do older men, because I don't feel I'm worth being with anyone I feel is attractive to me. With older men, I get to be the attractive young man they can have a night with. I can let them to whatever they want. The sickest part is that I know what I'm doing is completely masochistic. There is no emotional connection and I'm just a toy. At the end I feel ashamed, and it brings out a part of me I cannot understand. It just brings me back to a void in my childhood I cannot understand. Even typing this, I don't get it at all. I'm my own mystery to unlock. Also, I'm into rape fantasies, where I play the victim. It disgusts me, but I cannot stop myself from imagining it. Basically, I have memory gaps from my father's house as a child, and I'm not sure if he abused me within that time. He did for sure kiss and rub me within my definite memory when he was drunk. I've always fetishized him. I'm not sure if my memory gaps are anything relating. I had a friend technically abuse me for 2 years with my unknowing consent, but feel responsible. I have sex with older men for reasons I don't understand really. I hate myself. I'm screwed. Thanks Reddit for letting me voice my bullshit. This probably won't be seen, but I'll go for it. I met an amazing girl and moved across the world to be with her. I absolutely hate this country. It's a third world one, but my wife and her family had been great for most of the time here. We have had our ups and downs, but I never felt the way I do until now. I'm preparing to bring my wife with me. Recently my wife's family's financial situation has gotten worse and this is putting an incredible amount of pressure on my wife. We live reasonably, not very much money, but enough to get by. The expectations are that my wife is to care for her mother and other family members when they don't have money, and they expect it to come from me. Before it was small things and I didn't mind, but it's been getting bigger and bigger to the point I can't afford to help them anymore. I have to bring my wife with me back to my home so we can work and get on with our future careers, but it's getting to the point that I'll never be able to leave here if I don't get them to let me save the money I need to. I try to talk to my wife about this, but they get seriously into our business and will badmouth me in a second if I don't give them what they're expecting. My wife tries to understand where I'm coming from, but the way the culture is here she is expected to provide from them, even though she is much younger than all her siblings. I see now that my wife isn't going to be able to say no, and I'm not going to be able to help them in the way they think I can afford to. Talks of getting them to understand have only ended in absurd arguments where I'm being threatened and I'm on the verge of leaving and never coming back. In my mind I'm considering getting on a plane and just never coming back. My wife will be forced against her will not to be with me if I don't give in to their demands, so I won't be able to bring her with me. I have it all planned out, and they won't even know when I leave. I'm trying everything to resolve this and it only gets worse. This situation is just getting to be destructive, and the longer I stay the deeper in this shit I'm getting into, and I'll never be able to leave. The only thing that keeps me from pulling the trigger is that I really love my wife, but her family will never allow us to be together, and I'll never be able to support them the way they think I can. I'm still young and trying to find my career and can barely get by on my own, and it will be too much to expect help from me when I'm living in the States on my own. The only real loving relationship I've recently had is here. I don't have family who would be there for me in the States, and I will have to throw this all away so I can survive. It's eating me up inside and I can't focus on anything right now. Never ever told a soul about this. No one knows, including the parents, that would accept me no matter what. I have a major identity disorder, untreated, because since I was 10 I've been contorting my facial features at all waking hours to disguise my true appearance. I have naturally droopy eyes, large lips for a man, and an overbite. Every day, I squint my eyes, curl my upper lip, and when I smile, and jut out my lower jaw just enough to drastically change the shape of my face and the general relationship between my features. When I became aware of the strangeness of this behavior as a teenager, I was desperately concerned that others would notice the cracks in my veneer, and so had difficulty sitting on the left side of people. The right side of my face was the least controlled, and having any pictures taken of me, still do, to an extent. This coupled with deep depression made the years of quintessential self-discovery in a young person's life ones of intense confusion and detachment. Over the years, however, I fine-tuned this behavior so that among most I'm now considered to be a conventionally handsome man, when in truth I'm conventionally ugly by normal standards. When I approached adulthood and went to a large public university, I took the opportunity to create an public identity that matched the physical countenance I had molded for myself, one of the utmost confidence and charm. Many people bought it, but the image flickered on bad days. I grew further from myself. Then, 2 years ago this summer, a close friend of mine killed herself, shattering my false sense of social standing and condemning me to a relationship with a girl I didn't love, who also had severe identity issues spawned from abuse as a child. After getting her into therapy long enough to break up with her, I immediately entered another relationship simply because it seemed light at the end of the tunnel. I do not love my current girlfriend either, as much as I tell her I do. As a 21-year-old today, I deal with crippling anxiety and ontological dislocation on a regular basis. I cannot reconcile the physical differences between my true appearance and the image I've contrived, and I fear that it is too late to let go. In fact, I have no idea what physical toll letting go, aka relaxing my facial features for longer than a minute or two, would have on me, let alone on my psychological state. It will need to be a gradual process if I ever decide to accept it. Does anyone else do this? Or has anyone heard a similar story? I haven't been able to find any similar cases online. For now, as a perfectionist in all of my pursuits, I live in constant fear that I will lose control and others will see the shadowed figure behind the mask. I'm afraid that that figure is my true myself, because I don't know what that would make me. I was sent to military school in the Midwest the summer after my freshman year of high school for 2 months. I was sent for getting a D in algebra, not for any behavioral issues. My parents are the greatest people in the world, and while I was pissed back then, I can see how it was a good idea in theory. Anyway, my dad is Jewish and my mother is Catholic, but I identified with my Jewish heritage much more back then. When I let it slip that I was Jewish, my world turned into a living nightmare. I got my ass handed to me on a daily basis. Toward the end, the ringleader of all of this got the idea to crucify me in our cabin by tying me to these 2 brooms that he had made into a crucifix. The group then proceeded to beat, sodomine, and whip me with whatever items they could find. I've never told anyone the entire truth. I feel like it's too much to put upon someone and have them try to empathize. I told my parents and my best friend about the beatings, but not the crucifixion, and no one else. It's been about 7 years since then, and I actually blocked out the entire memory until I went to a psychologist for AB testing 2 years ago. I think this is probably what sparked my atheism so early on in life. There are times when I'm almost glad that it happened, because I feel like I've experienced the greatest evil that exists, pure blind hate, and I'm still standing. For a while right after, and since the memory came back, I was severely depressed, because I just couldn't wrap my head around how anyone could hate a person or group of people so much. It still blows my mind, but I've come to terms with the fact that there are just some people in the world who only deal in hate. I try every single day to counteract this, and I will continue to do so for the rest of my life. TLDR, I was beaten and crucified for being Jewish at military school when I was 15 and have never told anyone. Although I was the victim, I feel like if I told anyone it might change the way they viewed me and make me seem like a martyr or like I'm looking for attention. The 29th of October 2012. Update. Hey guys, sorry it's been a while. Life has been crazier than ever, and my Redditing has fallen somewhat by the wayside. Thank you all so much for taking the time to say something. It's really been such a comfort knowing that, despite not knowing me personally, people can come together and comfort another human being. It's quite humbling. So I did end up telling the whole story to two of my friends and they were totally awesome about it. They took the hard-as, humorous approach to it and asked me the ringleader's name and said they would track him down and give him a piece of their minds. I also shared it with my boss who, since starting my job 6 months ago, has become my mentor and one of my closest friends. He's very similar to myself, and I knew, right after meeting him, that he would be someone I could confide in. More than anyone, he helped me come to terms with what happened and rationalize it all. It still hurts a lot to think about, but mainly because I know that there are millions of people going through the same or far worse on a daily basis. That's the worst part. As for my parents, I just don't think I can tell them the entire truth. I honestly believe it could break them slightly if they knew. I think there are times when spilling it all isn't what's best for a relationship. I did consider contacting the school, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wouldn't accomplish anything. Bullying, no matter the epithet, is always going to be a problem in schools. The fact that I have no evidence and 7 years have passed means that they don't have any more of a reason to listen to me than they do to someone in my position who went there 30 years ago. Teachers have moved on, policies have changed, etc. However, this does not mean I'm doing nothing about it. The company I work for is involved with numerous charities and advocacy groups around my city and I've been able to do so much to help out. I also volunteer at an assisted living/retirement home a few days a week. My big project is a social networking/charity website that I've been working on for about 8 months now, and I'm hoping to launch in the spring. So I guess my point is that I've taken all of the crappy things in my life that I've personally experienced as well as witnessed, and I'm making it my life's goal to do everything I can to balance them out with great things. I meet some of the most amazing people on a daily basis and it always reminds me that the majority of the world is comprised of good people. I encourage everyone to learn from all of your bad experiences, as well those of others, and just be kind and helpful to everyone. You'll never regret it. Okay, I think this is too buried, but I feel the need to get it off my chest because I've never told a soul. When I was younger, probably 11/12, 7th/8th grade, I had a friend we'll call Jerry. Well, I had just started getting into masturbation, bisexuality, etc. We were best friends, and he had too. We talked about it on and off, ranging from random things about erections to how we prefer to masturbate. I was always incredibly uncomfortable talking about it, but did because he did. I got all excited when I realized that our dish cable got porn channels, and he rushed over, lived down the street, to check it out. I was still incredibly new to the idea of jerking off while watching porn, as odd as that may sound. I never did, at least not yet. We watched the Vivid Network, I remember, and there was a scene with 2 guys and a girl. He pulled his jeans down and started playing with himself, and I was incredibly uncomfortable with the situation. He asked me to jerk him off, but I said I didn't want to. He said he would jerk me off after I did it to him, but I still refused. He basically shoved his dick in my face, not literally, but he came up very close to me and told me just to touch it. I still refused, and finally he made some offhand comment on how the kids at school would be interested to know that I asked him to show his dick to me. Well, I very obviously didn't. He said it jokingly, legitimately, but at the time, I was bullied maliciously at school, and it terrified me thinking they might have another reason to beat on me, so reluctantly, I kind of just did it. It didn't feel right, and I was disgusted with myself. He presumably got off, then he yanked my pants down, and started on me. I kept swatting his hand away, and telling him I decided I didn't want to, but he just kept doing it, until we heard the front door open, and heard my mom coming in. He quickly yanked his pants up, and I did mine, and he told me, if I told anyone, he would tell everyone, that it was my idea, and I made him do it. I was so scared and confused, I didn't know what to do. We didn't talk for years and years. We'd talk sporadically, but I had a ridiculous amount of contempt and resentment toward him for a long time. Finally, toward the end of high school, we started talking again, and became best friends. To this day, he's my very best friend. Ever. This guy has literally went to the ends of the earth for me and back, and I couldn't ask for a better bro. We are both in committed, long relationships, and have fairly good lives. On the flip side, when I got older, I started fantasizing about having sex with a guy. I don't find men attractive. I don't have any desire to date a man, or kiss a man, or anything like that, but I have fantasies about doing it again with him sometimes, or just having sex with a guy, or even watching gay porn sometimes. It's always scared me that I was gay. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but I'm sure I don't have to explain myself on that. To this day, it still confuses me. Was I molested? Was it just two kids exploring sexuality? We've never talked about it, and probably never will. I wouldn't even know how to begin to talk about it. I don't know if that's what may have faked me up, or I developed these ideas and thoughts on my own. Woo. Sorry, but it feels good to tell someone. I'm probably late to the party, and will be as my username states here, but most of this, I've never told, and this is my chance. I can't say it would ruin my life if it got out. It mostly already has, though I do continue to struggle, so my life is not as bad as I know it could have been, and probably is for so many here with not dissimilar stories. If I ever brought it out publicly, I'm sure it would make a mess for a lot of others and certainly cause me even more problems. I apologize in advance for how long this will be. I think from a very young age I was daddy's little girl. I trusted and respected him completely, as any daughter should. The first memory I have of something not being right was when I was probably about 6ish. I don't remember exactly. Of course it is normal for parents to kiss their children, but one day my father decided to teach me a new way to kiss using tongues. Of course, being so young, the very idea seemed kind of disgusting, but I trusted him, and I didn't know how to react, so I kind of just went along, though I definitely didn't like the experience. However, I had seen him kiss my mother this way, so there was the idea in my head that maybe it was something special, and I was important if he did this with me too. I even bragged to a neighborhood friend that my father kissed me the way he kissed my mom. My father overheard this though, and later told me never to tell anyone about it. From that point he also stopped any further attempts at this inappropriate behavior for the next few years. I mostly forgot about the whole thing in that time, and continued to love and trust my father completely. Then when I turned about 9 it got a lot worse. I really don't know how it happened the first time. My mom must have been at work, and I'm not sure where my brother was. Probably my father had just locked him in his bedroom to keep him out of the way. Somehow he got me out of my clothes, laid me down on the big armchair in the living room, and proceeded to perform oral sex on me. The entire time I was just utterly confused. I had no idea what was going on, what I was supposed to do, nothing. My only knowledge of sexuality at that point came from what had been gleaned from various nature shows and a kid's book about where babies come from. Of course I reacted to the physical stimulation after a time, but out of embarrassment and confusion I controlled and held back the reactions as much as possible. These situations continued for a few years. One of the most shameful parts of this whole experience in my mind is that a part of me wanted it. I experienced the physical pleasure, whether I understood it or not, and a part of me wanted more, so there were times I almost sought out these abusive situations. However, I did know inside that it wasn't good, and shortly after it started I became depressed and was praying that God would let me die in the night, so the pain would be over. During the same time there were some other changes in my life that I also didn't really like, and because I could understand these things, this is what I blamed for my pain. I didn't understand what the real source was, because I just couldn't wrap my head around it. The pattern was usually the same. My mom would be at work and my brother was sent to his room and locked in. Then my father would take me to his lair. There was never penetration, only oral, though I suspect he had hopes for it to evolve to that when I was old enough. There were a few times he tried to introduce me to porn, try to teach me about masturbation, and other things. He basically justified the whole thing as education, and that it was for my benefit, and that it was the best way, because as my father I should trust him, it was safe. I think he even convinced himself of these things, and that's how he rationalized the abuse. There were even some lessons about avoiding abusive situations just like the one I was trapped in. I realize now how much a master manipulator he was. Of course, I can now see how ridiculous it all is. Really, how can coming into my bedroom in the middle of the night to perform these acts be in any way educational? I pretended to sleep through the whole thing every time. Things continued for 3 to 4 years. I'm not completely sure of the actual timing. The big change came for me when, during one of the times I thought I actually wanted it, he made me ask out loud for him to do it. I did, and at that moment it hit me just how wrong the whole thing was. After that, I did my best to avoid it. I kept my distance from my father whenever possible, yet tried to act as if nothing had changed. I had become afraid. Eventually my father did notice the change, however. He had said at times that if I didn't like something, I should say so, tell him to stop, but I never really believed it. Control was one of the most important things to my father, and defiance was not taken lightly in any situation. To me, saying no equals defiance, and I was afraid of the consequences. However, one day, after it was finished, he asked me if I wanted it to stop. I've never much liked lying, so I answered honestly a simple yes. From that point it stopped, kind of. My father is nothing if not intelligent. I think he knew if he pushed too hard when I was unwilling I might talk, and it would cause serious trouble he wanted to avoid. He wanted to stay in control, and this was the way to do it. The physical abuse stopped, but there was a kind of mental abuse that never did. When I showered there was always porn magazines left in the bathroom, usually incest porn. He would even take me with him sometimes when he would go to buy the porn. Also, though I have no direct proof, I feel sure I was often watched, and perhaps even videotaped. I fear that one day, after he dies, I'll find this hidden stash of videotapes. I no longer trusted him at all, or felt safe in his presence. I wasn't even able to finally look at the situation and see it for what it was until I was 23. I'm now 32. I suffered from depression at the time for 13 years and managed to get myself out of it. Nobody ever knew I'd been suffering. I didn't have any support or help that whole time. I felt like all my friendships were lies. I feel every relationship I've had since it all started has been tainted. Trusting anyone is hard, in the fact that no matter how careful I've tried to be or how good a friend I try to be, I usually end up used or betrayed again. Hasn't helped. I haven't even tried to have a boyfriend in over 8 years. While I still can physically feel sexual desire, I can't feel real lust. I cannot be attracted to a person based on just looks. I feel screwed up and broken on so many levels. I still have no help or support. I know I'm not alone in this kind of experience, and that makes me sad for so many, but I'm alone in my life. I have a kind of pride in surviving so much on my own and remaining mostly functional, not succumbing to drugs or alcohol or even cigarettes. But I suffer every day, and happiness is a far off dream, so I sometimes wonder what the point is. One day at a time, I guess. Wish me luck. I send my best to all the others here also suffering. TLDR, helped organize a fairly large drug ring spanning multiple countries, made sheet loads of money, was almost caught and jailed and or killed by foreign military under the control of a major trafficker, made it back alive, was never caught by authorities or anyone else, and now live a normal life. Back in the mid to late 1990s I had a roommate that was from Amsterdam, and we were really into smoking good bud, so one year we decided to take a trip there for the Cannabis Cup. While we were there I met a lot of his relatives and friends. Some of these people were outright criminals, which is pretty common in the Netherlands. Several of his close friends were drug dealers selling a variety of items including ecstasy. One night we felt like rolling, so one of his friends came over with 2 huge bags full of pills and told us to grab a handful. So we took a bunch that night and had plenty left over to take back home with us. Several friends back home offered to buy what we had left, so we got rid of them. Fast forward a few months and my roommate decided to go back home to Amsterdam for a holiday and I go with him. We see the same guy again, and I told him that we took some pills back with us and everyone loved them and kept asking if they could get more. He replied, "You know, we can get some there if you know people who want them." Being the entrepreneur I am, we struck a deal and he gave us some pills to take back. We made it back with no problems and the pills were gone in no time. His friend was impressed at how quick they went, so they wanted to send more. We came up with ideas on how to get them here cost effectively and safely. We had some success with mailing them mixed in with large boxes of candy, but because we kept having to increase the number of shipments and number of pills in each shipment, they eventually started getting busted. So we switched methods a few times and finally realized the most effective and cheapest way to do it was to have mules fly them in the country. These mules were professionals and would stuff the pills in condoms, dip them in a solution, and swallow the condoms for the plane ride, only to drink some solution upon arrival to a hotel, to sheet them out in a bucket. Another method involved getting a tailor to sew pills in a vest that was worn underneath a coat. This method worked quite well and was very cost efficient. One mule could carry about 8,000 pills, but it was more risky due to the random pat downs. Business was good. We were making a shit ton of cash, and it was actually harder to get the cash out of the country than getting the pills here. I was really low-key about letting anyone know what we were doing, but my roommate loved to show off, which started causing problems between us. He was getting really faked up almost every night, and it was causing a severe lack of judgment on his part. He loved the attention and eventually started hanging out with another crowd of people. One of these guys, who had just gotten out of jail a few months before, got a call from some dude he knew who wanted a rather large quantity. He goes to meet the guy and it's a setup. So he gets busted along with all of our supply, and it was going to be a few weeks before we got anything else, so my roommate, in his delusional state, decided to fly back to Amsterdam to bring some back himself. He actually was so strung out at this point he decided to just duct tape a bag full to his inner thigh and fly back. If that weren't enough, he thought it was a good idea to take a couple of pills for the flight, and needless to say he got busted. His friends back in Amsterdam were not too happy about the situation. They contacted me saying how his desire to be a big shot was putting the whole thing in jeopardy and wanted me to take over things. So we decided, while he was in jail awaiting court hearing for a bond, that I'd take over, but they would keep sending him a small amount to keep him satisfied, but he wasn't to know that I was carrying on the business. I had a few friends in different cities that I trusted, so we expanded, and the business just kept getting bigger and bigger. Eventually I contacted another friend who had been living in another country partying for a few years. Let's call him Mike. He happened to be very good friends with some guy whose dad was a major trafficker. He said everything was set up, and as long as the quality was good they would jump at the opportunity, because X was hard to come by there. So we set up a meeting and have a mule bring a vest full of pills there. While sitting with Mike at his buddy's dad's compound, it finally hit me how large this had become. I mean, I was at a huge compound, which had a private zoo, with dozens of armed guards, with the son of one of the most powerful traffickers in the hemisphere, and if everything went well I would have more money than I ever imagined possible in my entire life. This was like some shit out of a movie. They liked the pills, and my friend's buddy, who I'll call Steve, was going to talk to his dad the next day. We didn't hear from Steve the next day or the following day. We decide to go to a different city about 2 hours away, and I go to my Mike's to pick him up, and I found him there completely out of his faking mind. He had been up all night eating ridiculous amounts of pills, and had been wandering around the hotel with no shirt on, sweating his ass off, and babbling to himself with a crazy look in his huge dilated eyes. The hotel staff was concerned, and I had to get him out of there before they called the police. He was so faked up that when we checked out and was walking out of his room, the bellhop just handed me a huge freezer bag full of pills and said, "You forgot these." Needless to say, he got the best tip of his life. I knew I couldn't let the guys from Amsterdam see him like this, so I checked him into a different hotel, took the pills with me, and came up with an excuse as to why we couldn't leave that day. Meanwhile, my roommate somehow gets wind of the fact that we are all out of the country working on some deal, and he was left in the dark. Of course he is beyond furious. All this starts stressing me out, but what I didn't realize was the real fun hadn't even begun. The following day my friend was finally starting to get back to a normal frame of mind, and we go to catch a bus with the pills on us, and just after we buy our tickets we round the corner to get on the bus and see military police searching everyone as they are boarding the bus. My friend and his girlfriend both say at the same time something to the effect of "Something isn't right. This never happens. We're in a line, and if we turn around and walk out it will look suspicious." So I whisper to my friend to just follow my lead and act like he is taking care of me. So I bend over and shove my finger down my throat and make myself puke and make a loud violent noise so everyone can see I'm sick. I immediately turn around and act like I'm about to throw up again and run back into the bus station holding my hand over my mouth like I'm going to the bathroom, but instead jump in the closest taxi and haul ass out of there. We take the most expensive taxi ride of my life to a city that is 2 hours away, all the while discussing how faked up that situation was and how odd it was for the military to be there searching everyone. It was like they knew something. Anyway, so we get to the town and track down one of the traffickers' cousins who tells us that when Steve went to talk to his dad about the opportunity, his dad flipped the fuck out and did not want him involved in that line of business. He told us to watch our back because his dad wanted to see us. Steve's dad was a very powerful guy and not someone you wanted to piss off unless you had a death wish. So Steve's dad sent Steve away somewhere and we had no way whatsoever to contact him. We know his dad is tied in with the police and factions of the military, so we conclude that the incident at the bus station was the work of Steve's dad, so now we are afraid for our lives. Plus we are stuck with thousands upon thousands of pills and have no fucking clue what to do. So we hide out and lay low for a couple of days trying to sell the pills to someone else. We can't get anything to pan out, and it feels like some of these people are just trying to rob us, while others may have connections with Steve's dad, and we don't want him to find us. I get more paranoid with every passing minute, and we switch hotels daily with the quality of the place getting worse and worse, until we finally ended up literally staying in a hoe house, and every time I hear a woman scream I immediately think someone has found us. So I start feeling sick one afternoon, and so does everyone else. I'm so paranoid at this point I thought we were all poisoned. So I gather enough strength to get out of bed, tell Mike and the guys from Amsterdam I need to get to a doctor, grab my bag, and take a taxi to the nearest airport. I took the first flight back home, go see a doctor the next day, ended up I had a bad case of food poisoning, and never spoke to any of those guys again. I finished college, and am now a successful business professional. I'm amazed at the lessons that period in my life taught me, and how often those lessons come in handy in the business world. In retrospect, it was good that it ended the way it did, because I would have surely ended up in jail or dead had I continued that lifestyle. Thankfully I never went to jail, or was even questioned, so there is nothing on my record. My roommate was not so lucky, and I read a news article where he served 3 years in federal prison. I've never told this story to anyone, and even if I did they'd never believe me. This secret could ruin several lives, not just mine. I was a rebellious kid and never got along with my family or anyone from my hometown, so I ran off from home as soon as I hit 18. Using Ike friends/acquaintances, I couch surfed for almost a year before coming across a business opportunity in California. I settled down and began a serious relationship with a woman named May. I dated May for 3.5 years and they were some of the best years of my life, but after a while she wanted more and I wanted less, and we broke up. Fast forward 6 years and I get a call from my little brother saying he's getting married, and despite my absence, he wanted me to be his best man. I fly home 2 weeks before the wedding, and that night at dinner my brother introduced me to my old girlfriend May, his fiancée. Although it was awkward, we both ignored the fact we knew each other. Real sap sheet. My brother gets pulled away for something or another, and I finally get to speak to May. We start a conversation that took us from the kitchen, out to the deck, and down the path to an old, dried up pond at the edge of my parents' property. It was like all of the good times from the 3 years of dating her were consolidated into that conversation. Everything just clicked. The rush of emotion was unlike anything I've ever felt, and it was the same for May. And despite being all sorts of evil, we took off all our clothes and faked like rabbits on the old dock. Over the next couple days I went over to my brother's apartment while he was at work. We faked all over everything, the couch, his bed, even the bathroom floor, all unprotected. A week passed, and the rush of emotion subsided, and I came to my sense, and although we both wanted more, we decided to stop seeing each other. The wedding went off without issue despite the best man feeling like a complete demon. I just wanted to get back on a plane to California as soon as possible. And after wishing the happy couple on their way, that's just what I did. Now here's where things get interesting. 5 months after the wedding, May calls me. She's pregnant. She tells me that her and my brother didn't have sex due to irrelevant issues from a month before the wedding to the honeymoon. 3 days after the wedding. The kid is mine. I'm not an expert on the reproductive system or math, so I'm relying on what May has told me, but she seems convinced. We both decide to pretend my brother is the father. The kid's first birthday is coming up, and I still don't know if I made the right choice, but I speak with my brother often, and he seems happy, and I'm fine with that. Ignorance is bliss. I cut some things out as the story was getting pretty long as it is. But holy shit, this was a cathartic experience. TLDR, my little brother married my ex-girlfriend. We rekindled our relationship before the wedding, and she gets pregnant with my baby, and to this day my brother has no idea we even knew each other before the wedding. I'm a terrible person. My military career has been the bane of my existence and biggest regret of my life. A part of my life that in large part has been kept from my wife and has made me feel extremely undeserving of my family and daughter, making it very difficult for me to have a relationship with her. I served 4 years as active duty army in a combat career field. I enlisted fresh out of high school with the motivation of a family legacy behind me and a strong desire to follow in my father's footsteps and to do what I felt a noble thing. At the time, I didn't entirely see it for what it was. In my 4 years I served 2 tours overseas, 1 to Afghanistan and my second to Iraq. I found myself stupid to the ways of the world, 19 years old in the middle of a place not quite like hell, but you could certainly see it from there, wondering what I'd gotten myself into. In a moment, where my unit had stopped briefly to survey and secure an area, a child approached our vehicles, not uncommon as we were frequently greeted by children who wanted MREs, candy, etc. But this time, the child, approximately 6 to 8 years in age, approached alone, and with a SFC screaming across me, I standing between him and the child, not giving him a safe line of fire to shoot him. I, at the time not more than a child myself, I still tell everyone I'm a grown-ass kid, could not fathom or understand why I needed to shoot this child. It just didn't calculate. In the time I hesitated, he was able to throw a grenade into one of our vehicles, severely injuring 3 of my unit and breaking my hesitation in momentary days. I shot him. I was told by other superiors it did what was expected and required of me, but just moments too late. To this day, I see his face. I have nightmares frequently of that place, and at times, wake up with same feeling stinging of the sun beating down on me, and the smell of that place all too real. However, most of my nightmares are of that child. I've told my wife none of this. She knows I served in the army, but that's mostly all she knows of it. I never told her of my deployments and planned never to do so for fear of what she'll think of me when I already think myself a monster. When my wife told me she was pregnant, it was the happiest I'd ever been in my life, and 9 months later, when I first held my daughter, I did not feel overwhelmed with joy. I was racked with grief and guilt and this undeserving feeling. When I hold her, I know I should have no place in her life, nor know the joy of being a father, because I've taken that from another and can't justify to myself that I should be blessed with her after having taken someone else's son from them. To have and enjoy a feeling that I robbed someone else of us breaks my heart and makes me frequently think it'd be better to her as a life insurance policy than a father. TL. Doctor, I killed a kid while deployed and hate myself for it. Holding my daughter makes me feel like a monster and I'll never tell my wife completely what I've done. Edited. Typus. Okay, I'll post. I need to get this off my chest, and it's now or never. I was a very messed up and curious child. My curiosity mostly was about sexual things, and this eventually led me to experiment with my brother, who is 4 years younger than me. I'm a female for reference. This went on from the time that I was about 8 to when I was 13. I eventually began feeling so guilty about it that I became really depressed. My brother and I decided to tell my mom one day because we both knew that it was wrong and couldn't live with the guilt for very much longer. She was definitely not happy when she found out. I tried to kill myself that night when she found out but was unsuccessful. My mom ended up taking me to a mental hospital where I stayed for about a week until she decided that it was doing more harm than good. She had a lot of trouble getting me out of there because I had to go into the state's care or something like that. All the therapists in the hospital that I talked to said that I would never be able to return home because of what I had done. I started cutting and hanging out with the wrong group of kids. After I got out, I was always a really good kid at school and never got in trouble until after all this happened. I got suspended from school, got even more depressed, and just wasn't my normal happy self anymore. This was just middle school. I was constantly having flashbacks and panic attacks from what happened with my brother to the point where I couldn't sleep at night and I couldn't stand to be around him. I couldn't even hug him properly without feeling terrible or sick until about 2 years ago. I saw a therapist for a little while, but she never brought up what happened with my brother for some reason. I was fine throughout high school, but I still retained my curiosity about sex. I lied and told the first guy that I had ever been with that I was a virgin, and he took my virginity in 9th grade. He used me to get back at his girlfriend that he had just broken up with 4 days before. Of course, I didn't know this until a huge scandal broke out about me. I dated normally after that and didn't really have any other problems until I graduated high school. The summer after I graduated high school, my dad committed suicide. I was completely devastated. I fell back into a state of depression and was very isolated from my brother. He was coping with things by smoking and drinking a lot, even though he was just in middle school at the time. My relationship with my brother has really never been the same after everything happened. I guess my other secret is that I have a huge ageplay fetish and I'm secretly obsessed with lolicon. My dad was never a huge part of my life because he lived all the way across the country. I saw him as more of a friend who I would go to for advice. I really want a daddy figure somewhere in my life. My boyfriend completely hates this idea and was a bit disgusted when I expressed my feelings about it, but he decided that he wanted to act as somewhat of an older brother to me because that really turned him on. I don't know how comfortable I feel about this because of what happened with my younger brother. I can't believe I just typed all of that. I feel so much better now. So my secret isn't something earth-shattering. I'm just completely, utterly ashamed about it. This is going to be long because I feel so much better writing this out. Nobody knows, so I figured that I might as well jump on this bandwagon and tell Reddit. My girlfriend, let's call her Jill, and I have been in a good relationship for many years now. We are planning on getting married. She will do anything for me and is just the sweetest girl. The thing is, well, let's back up. When I first met her, she was sort of overweight. More than chubby, but not like obese or anything. I thought nothing of it, tried not to be shallow, but I just could not being myself to be physically attracted to her. But she was absolutely wonderful in all other respects, so I just told myself that I was a dick and to stop thinking like that. But when we progressed enough in the relationship and we were both ready to be intimate, I could not do it. I couldn't get it up, no matter how hard I tried. I just saw her body and went limp. Now I know that you're thinking that I'm a complete ass for this, but I tried. I really did. I didn't want to tell her that I was unhappy with the way she looked because it really shouldn't matter, and I've heard about other women and their crazy self-esteem issues. But she could tell. She noticed, and she brought it up, and she asked me if it was because of her weight. I hemmed and hawed around because I didn't want to admit to being the dick that I am, but she figured it out. We broke up shortly after. We went our separate ways, and I missed her a lot. So, I couldn't help myself. I fantasized about her often, and couldn't bring myself to date her anyone else. And then I found the BBW subculture, which basically glorifies fat women. I looked up belly play videos of girls, and, maybe due to my emotional attraction to Jill, got immensely aroused by them. I watch them play with their fat, and I fap to them. Regularly. After I'm done I'm always disgusted. But I keep coming back. But then, out of the blue, Jill calls me. She wants us to meet. She tells me that she has been missing me so much, and that she wants to see me. I feel the same way, and I agree. So on that second first date, I can barely recognize her. She lost so much weight, just for me, just so I would be attracted to her. We got back together immediately, and now everyone assumes that we are in a happy idyllic relationship. But we are not. I'm afraid that I ruined her for life, and that she is somewhat anorexic, because she constantly asks me if she is skinny enough, and obsesses over food all the time. She thinks nothing is wrong with herself. I can't believe what she did for me, and I feel completely and totally awful for what I did to her. But she holds no grudges, and tells me that I couldn't help that I wasn't attracted to her before. If she knew that I'm now attracted to and jerk off to the type of person she once was, it would ruin her and our relationship, and probably both of our families. I have tried to stop looking at these videos but I can't. I actually prefer, sexually, my secret masturbation sessions over our together sex. I'm trying very hard to stop this, and I hope that I can soon. This is a secret that I will take to my grave. TLDR, I hated how my girlfriend was fat. She lost weight for me. I now have a fat chick fetish. Wow. New to Reddit, and made a throwaway just for this. I have been waiting for a moment to vent, and I just found it. I'm not sure this will ever get read, but here goes. Relevant backstory. My mom had recently opened up a new business, and was so completely absorbed in it that, at the time, didn't have time to worry about me. My brother was in college so I, 14, was basically free to do whatever I wanted. Since I really didn't have any adult supervision, my older sister, 22, who practically raised me, decided to step in and take control. Since I just wasn't going to school and my grades were dropping. I was never a bad kid, just really lazy. My sister had a boyfriend, who I'll call Joe, that she was with forever, since I can remember. She left the house at 16, when I was 8, and moved in with him. He was a mechanical guy, was born and raised in LA, laid back 4 years older than my C's. Joe was into lowriders, and would often go cruising, so one night I asked if I could go too, since it sounded like fun to go around in a bouncing car. He said yes, and he had told me that my sister can't find out, because she was basically my mother role, and would have to ask for permission. So of course, being a naive 14Y/0, I told him that I wouldn't say anything. I didn't live with them. I jumped into the car and expected to go riding down to the city or some car show meetup they had established. Joe and I ended up going to a Dave & Buster's, and Joe ended up getting drunk as hell. While we were in the car, we had a very peculiar conversation. He was talking about how physical contact is so taboo or something. He tried to prove a point by poking my arm and then saying, "Do you trust me?" Then grabbing my breast saying, "See, it's touching. They are both the same. What the difference?" It was so bizarre to me, and it freaked me out, but I figured he was just making a point. It seemed very off, but Joe had always been that cool bro, so I didn't really say much. I was just telling him that there is a difference, and that you shouldn't let yourself be touched inappropriately, but I guess he was trying to blur the boundaries there. I don't know, I was very young and dumb. He had told me that we had to get a hotel room because he couldn't drive drunk, and that he would take me back home in the morning. I started to panic a little because I didn't want to stay in a hotel with my drunk brother-in-law, and since I had just gotten my permit, I told him that I could drive us back. It was rainy and his car was stick shift, so I really started getting anxious. He kind of drunk rambled about how I can't drive without a license, and not to worry. We got to the hotel and the whole time I was freaking out. We got inside the room, and I sat on the farthest corner of the bed away from him. I remember him laying down and telling me that if anything happens just tell me it'll be okay in the morning. I didn't really get what he meant but I agreed. He was drunk and laying on the bed when he suggested I lay next to him and just relax and go to sleep. My heart was beating so fast and I was so uncomfortable. I didn't know what to do, so I just laid there on the bed. He started to touch my breasts and tried to reach into my jeans. I was so scared, and I kept trying to be passive aggressive saying things like don't do this. My sister will be so upset. I just wanna sleep. Stop, you're drunk. He didn't care, so he ended up taking my clothes off and then proceeded to get on top of me. I cried silently to myself and didn't want to fight because I was so scared that he was going to do something else to me. I'm very petite and at 14, I was even smaller, so it really hurt me. It wasn't a violent rape, it was just like him doing this either way so just relax type of deal. He was big down there, and I remember it hurting with every thrust, so I suffered the entire time. When he was done he just rolled over and fell asleep. I laid awake the entire night trembling and crying so ashamed, and thinking what the fuck just happened. Finally, in the morning, he got up, and was all what happened last night. I'm so hungover, so I said to him in a trembly crying voice that everything will be okay. When I said that he immediately looked at me was like OMG did we have sex last night? You should have said no. This is not good. I was crying to myself and he gently grabbed my shoulder and said don't worry it's okay, we can fix this. And he took me home. I felt like complete and utter shit and was way too scared to say anything to anyone, so I didn't say a word. Ever. Then a few months after the event, he called me. He got on the phone with me and was telling me that the only way for us to keep this a secret and never let anyone find out was by burying the hatchet. He said that he thought I was going to tell my sister, and I would swear to God that I would never because I was so ashamed and to just drop it, but he insisted that he did not trust me and said that in order for this to go unspoken, we would have to have sex one more time. I felt like I had just been sentenced to death. Mind you, I had just turned 15 at the time. He was 25. I told him that his idea was stupid and to just drop it and forget it ever happened because I wanted to move on with my life and run away from all the shame. He insisted and would even say shit like look I think I need to talk to your sister and tell her because I don't want you running and saying something without having my side of the story told. I was so dumbfounded. I was lost. I was stuck. I was alone. I was being bribed into having sex with my brother-in-law. I told him that I didn't want to whatsoever, but he insisted, so I felt I had no choice but to give in. He had put me in a position that I would lose everything if I didn't bite the bullet, or so I thought at the time. He had established that he would send me a text message saying 187, and I would have to reply with a date and time so we could meet up and have sex. It made me faking sick each time I saw it. My sister had no idea of anything because she considered Joe to be a part of the family and Joe covered it up really well. He would say stuff to my sister like hey tell your sister to come with me to the junkyard so she can help me pull some parts and then send me the text. Since my sister knew I was into cars, it wasn't suspicious. This continued for years. Every month or two, I would get a text, and if I failed to meet up or set up a date, he would threaten me with telling my sister, which to me meant he would just walk out on her and leave the mess to me. And since I would have rather died than to have my sister find out this was happening to me, I would have to agree. Each time was worse and worse. It got to the point where I would go to the motel room and just sit on the bed and he would have to literally take my clothes off, since I was not going to on my own free will. He noticed my lack of enthusiasm and kicked it up a notch and started saying from now on I had to wear sexy lingerie. Sometimes I would have to strip. He would tell me to talk to dirty. It was so difficult for me too, and I would half-ass everything just to get my ass out of there. I felt like I was being tortured, my innocence completely snatched from me. It was really fucking horrible, and you Reddit souls are the only ones that know about this. I have been holding on to this secret and refuse to tell anyone. The last straw was when he hit me up randomly last year and told me we still had 187 left and that I had to do it or else everything would come to light. I remember that phone call and I remember screaming and yelling at him, bawling my eyes out. I called him a monster, a devil. I told him that I would tell his daughter, my young niece, about everything. I told him that I would commit suicide and tell this story and write his name on the death note. I fought my hardest fight to try to get him to just let me be. Leave me alone. Never bother me with this, and it did not work. I had to do it. I felt like I was forced to, or else everything in my life would come crashing down. It was my hardest battle ever fought, and the toughest defeat I had to ever face. The worst part is that this last time happened at the time that I was going through a miscarriage, and that still didn't stop him. I was a prisoner of this for years. It went on for 9 years. My family never found out. No one suspected a single thing. The worst part is that my sister is my closest relative and the closest to a mom that I have ever had. In the house we grew up in, we had an uncle that molested her as a young girl and she vowed to protect me from abuse. Joe knew about her past too, and you think that stopped him from violating me? Nope. As of today, everything is now over, and I hope to leave it in my past. He is still married to my sister and they are still involved in my life. I have chosen to act as if nothing happened, and it's been the hardest thing to teach myself how to do. He talks to me like a normal human and even jokes with me. I have really bad anger problems because of this, and have serious trust issues. I don't accept any form of apologies from anyone, and I feel like it is because I was never apologized to because of this horrific secret life. I'm the most stubborn person now and no one will tell me what I can and cannot do. I never went to therapy and I never asked for help. My best friend tends to rant to me about her tough life and how traumatized she is from her uncle attempting to molest her and cries about it time to time, and I just sit there and hold her, tell her it's over now. I will never show my true pain. TLDR, I was an underage sex slave for 9 years to my sister's husband. No one ever knew. Worst part of my life. Would destroy my life if ever came out. One regret of all time was asking to go cruise. My life is a ticking time bomb. I'm just waiting for it to go off. I was raised in a really conservative home, so when I rebelled as a teenager, I went all out. I met this stupid guy, let's call him Steve, and we were in a relationship for a little over a year. He finally broke up with me, and I started going out with someone new. Fast forward several months, Steve breaks into my apartment and rapes me. I was too embarrassed to tell my new boyfriend, so I just broke up with him instead. I try to stop talking to Steve, but he keeps bugging me. Plus, we have so many mutual friends that it's hard for me to cut the ties without exposing my secret. About a month later, I find out that I'm pregnant. Steve finds out through mutual friends and is convinced the baby is his. I tried to tell him to back off, but he was very forceful, calling me all the time, coming around my apartment, and making threats. At this point, I wasn't sure if I was pregnant with Steve's baby or my new ex-boyfriend's baby, but I wasn't about to tell either of them about my uncertainty. I half-heartedly tried to contact my new ex-boyfriend, but he had moved, and we didn't have any mutual friends, so I just gave up. Throughout all of this, the entire pregnancy, Steve refused to leave me alone. He said he didn't want to do a paternity test because he already knew the baby was his. He alternated between demanding that I put the baby up for an open adoption and demanding that I keep it, but not hold him financially responsible. He regularly berated me for ruining his life by getting pregnant and would call me in the middle of the night saying that he was going to run his car into a tree or push me down the stairs and kick me in the stomach if I didn't promise to put the baby up for adoption. I wanted to keep the baby, but didn't want anything to do with Steve, so I tried to convince him to legally forfeit his paternity rights, which he refused. The harassment finally got so bad that I moved in with my ultra-conservative parents and essentially hid out in their home until I had the baby. After my child was born, I made a fake paternity test and presented it to Steve, stating that I had contacted my ex-boyfriend and he had agreed to a paternity test. Steve took a look at the bogus paper and fell for it and didn't bug me again. This wouldn't be so bad. I successfully shooed off an abusive, rapist ex-boyfriend and kept him out of my child's life, but then things took a turn for the worse. 2 years later, my new ex-boyfriend finds out that I had a baby, so he knows that it's his and wants to meet him and see him. I'm stuck in a difficult position because if I say I'm not sure, then it's going to open up a whole new can of worms with the Steve situation. So, like an idiot, I agree to let him meet my son, but refuse to accept any support from him whatsoever. My new ex-boyfriend has a wife and another baby now, so the whole family is involved in my years-long crockpot of lies. 2 years later, new ex-boyfriend still thinks my son is his. Luckily, he is only very casually involved and rarely sees him, doesn't support him financially or otherwise, so I think the damage is fairly minimal there. My son looks exactly like Steve. I can't admit or confide in anyone, lest Steve find out, and I'm too scared to get a paternity test, because I know the results would get back to Steve, and then he would have 4 years of rage-fueled catching up to do. I don't have any of his former abuse documented in any way, so he would have the upper hand and I look like a lying skank. Also, within the last 4 years, I've gotten married. My husband doesn't know anything about Steve and thinks my son's dad is my new ex-boyfriend. He would be so sad if he found out that I lied to him. This thread is basically dead by now, and I'm pretty sure this will get completely buried under the previous 26,342 comments, but I've been starving myself for the past 3 years. Not a single soul knows, except for my boyfriend, after he found a notebook where I've spent countless nights writing in, trying to ease my mind into sleeping. He knows of it, but not to its full extent. I don't even know what hungry feels like anymore, but I rely on that emptiness more than anything. It empowers me, it gives me such satisfaction. That dizziness you get right before you're about to pass out. I crave that feeling. I can go days without eating more than a rice cake, and I usually do. Every now and then I go absolutely insane and binge like a madman, and sometimes I quite literally feel like my stomach is going to explode. I wouldn't be surprised if it did. I can't even begin to imagine how thin my stomach lining is at this point. The gradual shrinking and total, sudden stretching. Most nights I spend by myself. I've lost almost all of my friends. It's my fault. I push them all away. People bond over food. They go out to eat. They get ice cream together. They drink liquid calories in the form of liquor and stop at diners to order huge, greasy breakfasts the next morning. There's only so many times you can refuse before you stop getting phone calls. I barely speak to my best friend anymore. She says it's my fault. I don't deny it. I think I've accepted and come to terms with the fact that this is probably going to kill me. That's okay. I'm tired of being empty, but I can't eat. I'm tired of hurting my boyfriend over and over again, but he's so strong, and I'm too weak to cut him off. I'm honestly just so tired and so shamed. I have no one to talk to, no one who understands what it's like. It doesn't matter what it is, any piece of food brings on total, overwhelming guilt and this disgusting, choking regret. Normal people don't send themselves into fits of hysterics over a bowl of cereal. I've cried so many times over the size of my legs, my butt, my wrists. I've actually sat in my car and cried for over an hour about the size of my wrists. Who does that? I literally disgust myself. If the wrong person ever found out and told my entire family, I'd be forever labeled as the sick girl, the one we have to watch what we say around. So don't talk about weight/food/body. Eating habits scrutinized. Meals forced, and I think this is what scares me most of all. Depression noted. Suicide watch. Because surely, a girl who refuses her body basic nourishment must want to die. This secret wouldn't ruin my life, but I have carried it all my life like it would. I was my grandfather's most favorite person in life. He even moved from NJ to FL to watch me grow up and spend time with me. I spent all of my time with him, and he was my best friend. He ended up getting cancer and my mom took him in, despite being divorced from my dad, and him not being her real father. She's awesome like that. He was eventually dying in front of my eyes and I couldn't talk to him anymore, watching him waste away. He stayed in my room for a while, as I slept on the couch. It was really tough seeing him like that. But none of this was the secret you asked for. I guess when he decided to come stay with us, he had a goof chunk of change in his pocket. I would say around $400. He put it on my dresser and just left it there for weeks as he lay dying. When he went to hospice, he still left the money there and I hid it. This was a lot of money for me back then, middle school, so around 12 years old. I figured I would hold it for him until he got better. Well, funny thing about going to a hospice, you don't get better. He died. My world shattered. My best friend gone. His sons, my dad and uncle, were all fighting over money and everything. I decided to keep the $400. Although a part of me felt like he wanted me to have it, I also felt like I was stealing. It was the guiltiest I had felt about anything in my life. I guess karma got me in the end though. My grandfather left me and my sister around $10G4 when we turned 18 or 21. My father, with no formal investment knowledge or college degree, decided to invest it. Remember that dot-com bubble? Yeah, they got what little inheritance I had. So I guess there is that. Also, another secret I never told my dad, that he would kill me if he found out. When I was struggling really bad in college, I sold all of the baseball cards he had left me. Those were his pride and joy that he spent so long collecting. I needed the money though, and he stopped paying my mom child support and alimony, so I didn't feel so bad. Oh god, I just remembered I also sold the Ted Williams autographed baseball my grandfather gave me. That just made me start to cry. He got it signed by himself, way back in the day, so no sticker to authenticate it. But I know he told the truth. Ted Williams was my favorite baseball player because of my past influence, and so when he saw how awesome I thought it was, he just gave it to me. I sold it to get through college. God damn it, I wish I could go back and get that ball. I still have your purple heart pop-up. I look at it all the time. This secret wouldn't ruin my life, but I have carried it all my life like it would. I was my grandfather's most favorite person in life. He even moved from NJ to FL to watch me grow up and spend time with me. I spent all of my time with him, and he was my best friend. He ended up getting cancer and my mom took him in, despite being divorced from my dad, and him not being her real father. She's awesome like that. He was eventually dying in front of my eyes and I couldn't talk to him anymore, watching him waste away. He stayed in my room for a while, as I slept on the couch. It was really tough seeing him like that. But none of this was the secret you asked for. I guess when he decided to come stay with us, he had a goof chunk of change in his pocket. I would say around $400. He put it on my dresser and just left it there for weeks as he lay dying. When he went to hospice, he still left the money there and I hid it. This was a lot of money for me back then, middle school, so around 12 years old. I figured I would hold it for him until he got better. Well, funny thing about going to a hospice, you don't get better. He died. My world shattered. My best friend gone. His sons, my dad and uncle, were all fighting over money and everything. I decided to keep the $400. Although a part of me felt like he wanted me to have it, I also felt like I was stealing. It was the guiltiest I had felt about anything in my life. I guess karma got me in the end though. My grandfather left me and my sister around $10G4 when we turned 18 or 21. My father, with no formal investment knowledge or college degree, decided to invest it. Remember that dot-com bubble? Yeah, they got what little inheritance I had. So I guess there is that. Also, another secret I never told my dad, that he would kill me if he found out. When I was struggling really bad in college, I sold all of the baseball cards he had left me. Those were his pride and joy that he spent so long collecting. I needed the money though, and he stopped paying my mom child support and alimony, so I didn't feel so bad. Oh god, I just remembered I also sold the Ted Williams autographed baseball my grandfather gave me. That just made me start to cry. He got it signed by himself way back in the day, so no sticker to authenticate it. But I know he told the truth. Ted Williams was my favorite baseball player because of my past influence, and so when he saw how awesome I thought it was, he just gave it to me. I sold it to get through college. God damn it, I wish I could go back and get that ball. I still have your Purple Heart pop-up. I look at it all the time. TLDR at the top, because I like it on top. I was extremely sexually curious as a kid. My parents decided the best solution was to ignore it, and as a result I felt up my dog. This led to years of anxiety that I was some kind of depraved pervert. The sexual tension eventually climaxed in me realizing that I'm a perfectly normal person with awful parents and a dog that kept humping my leg. I was raised to believe that anything other than sexual abstinence until marriage between a man and a woman is dirty and wrong. And I always questioned it. I've always been sexually curious as far back as I can remember. I have vivid memories dating back to when I was 3 and 4 years old of curiosities, fantasies, and occasionally things I would ask or say. At age 12, the day after I asked my mom about a lot of sexual thoughts I was having where she basically dodged my questions, my dad sat me down and told me that sex is something reserved for a man and his wife, that anything else was dirty and wrong, that my curiosities and desires were wrong, etc. When I started asking him questions, he as well dodged by explaining that his father didn't know what to say to him either at my age. So basically my sex talk was an explanation that I was not going to get the sex talk. This inevitably led me to Google Images. In the summer between 6th and 7th grade, I would sneak out of bed at 2 in the morning to search for bikinis. Weeks later, my heart pounded as I searched for boobies. Weeks, what felt like years, after that I mustered up all my courage to search for vaginas. Eventually my parents found out, and I was grounded for several months of no computer, which I disobeyed as often as I could. In between constant fear that my soul was beyond saving, it had basically become a game to me. How to sneak out of my creaky old bed and down my creaky stairs without being heard. How to delete search history. How to bypass focus on the faking family internet protection. I think, between the ages of 12 and 18, there were only ever 5 or 6 collective months where I wasn't grounded from the computer. When I was 13, though, my parents were going on about how the world was about to end, and of course my biggest fear was that I'd die before having sex at least once. Considering myself desperate and sexually confused as fuck, I reasoned that sex with animals was okay. But from searching my Bible, using keywords like naked and intercourse, I knew that sex with an animal meant that I'd be dragged from my home and shot to death with arrows from any citizen that truly feared God. So I held off, reasoned to myself, contemplated nervously, and finally decided I'd rather be brutally murdered than live in fear. This resulted in my hiding in my basement one day, and, since I still had no faking idea what sex was, rubbing my dog's belly while I looked at her crotch. I don't remember what I did for the rest of that day other than hide in my room and fear that I was going to get pelted with arrows out of nowhere. But over the following days and weeks it went from a fear of death to a lingering anxiety that I was damned, and I vowed that this would be a lifelong personal burden that I wouldn't dare tell anyone, lest they be damned as well. This kept up until I was closer to 18 and just stopped caring. All in all, it's been another 4 years since that time, and I've slowly come to accept that it, and everything along with it, was just normal sexual growth with a lot of unnecessary social bullshit dropped on it. I no longer feel like it's something to be guilty about. I'm just sharing this because I've never told anyone before, and I refuse to keep carrying that burden around. I actually haven't developed any animal fetishes since then, but if that's your thing, I'm not going to judge. TL, Dr. Vaginus. I live in a knifey neighborhood. I'm kind of a scrawny white kid in a primarily Mexican neighborhood. Shootings are on a weekly basis, gangs roam the street, any car that isn't in a garage is broken into, and home invasions are extremely common. My mother insisted that I get a CCW license. I eventually did. I carry a Springfield 1911 A1. One day my car was giving me trouble, so I decided to walk to the local auto shop and pick up a new part. Halfway there, 3 very sketchy looking guys were walking my way. I never made eye contact and tried to look right past them. I noticed that they were staring hard at me, and one guy went across the street. This is a bad sign. One of the guys stops in front of me, one is behind me, and the other is across the street. They tell me to give them my wallet and phone. I of course agree, and slowly hand them over. Then they told me to get on my knees. My heart beat like a heavy drum. My stomach was in my throat. They were going to fucking execute me. The guy in front of me pulled out a knife. I heard the clack of a gun behind me, and a faint sound of a gun being cocked from the guy across the street. My body felt like it was on fire from the adrenaline. I did what I had to do, and I lunged back and pushed with all my force against the man behind me down, pulled out my 1911 and shot him twice in the chest, turned around and shot the guy with the knife once in the neck and once in the heart, and the guy across the street opened fire, but missed every shot. I shot him 4 times in the chest. This is where I faked up. I panicked. I started hyperventilating. I didn't know what to do as all common sense left me, and my mind went totally blank. I was never prepared to ever use that gun. I don't have that sort of mindset. I picked up my shells, took back my wallet and phone and just ran back home. I considered calling the police to tell them what had happened, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I heard the sirens up and down the street and I wanted to say something. Keep in mind, I'm in a panic mode still. I was like this for days. It was 3 days later, I saw it on the local news. It was about the 3 men, who turned out to be no older than 17, that I had shot. They even pointed out that the gun that was behind me turned out to be a pellet gun. That very day, I heard a knock on my door. It was a man who had seen me do it. He also said that he told the police that it was a rival gang that did it. He knew my mom and he knew me. He didn't want to see me or her go down with me trying to defend myself. He also claimed that it was those 3 who had been throwing rocks through their windows and breaking into their car. What really sent me for a spin was that he claimed that 2 of them gang raped his 17-year-old daughter at some party. He thanked me, shook my hand, and told me I had nothing to worry about since the cops think that it's an open and shut case of gang violence. I thought for sure there would be a huge investigation of 3 kids in a gang being shot to death, but no, the story was just picked up by anti-gun groups and a platform for more police funding. The story was left at that. But still, even though they had done bad things, and I was seen as some hero in a man's eyes, I just can't forget what I did, and I'm seeing a therapist about it. My secret is nothing compared to what others have suffered or are still suffering, but it does bother me, so here goes anyway. I'm a near 35-year-old guy working in the legal field. I'm my own boss. I spend long days at the office, often up till midnight. When I go home my family, wife, kids, are all fast asleep. I don't see them a lot, only really during the weekends, but then I'm often too tired from the past week, so I don't do a lot with them. Now here's the catch. A huge chunk of the time I spend at the office is wasted on the web. There have been days where I came in early and left the office some 12 to 14 hours later, only to realize I surfed it away. Literally didn't do any work, just clicked and clicked and clicked. I didn't even enjoy it, just surfed it away, looking at funny sites, checking out news sites every 5 minutes, reading the same pages again. Nothing illegal, not taking anyone's money. I don't bill anyone for the time wasted. Just a sad way to spend my life, losing out precious years with my family, obviously telling lots of small lies. Long day at work, honey? Yeah, loads of work. Customers which are unhappy since they have to wait longer for my work and feeling generally bad about it. If people would find out it would be painful. Customers would probably look for another legal supplier. My wife would be very unhappy and my kids would just be disappointed that daddy prefers to waste his life away rather than spend time with them. I can't count the number of times I swore to myself this is it. I quit. Never again, only to see me make the same mistake again. Just 5 more minutes. Not much, as I said, but it does sadden me that I waste my life like this. Anyone else who's got this and who found a way to put an end to it? Join just to comment on this. I'm a long-time Reddit browser, but never felt the need to have an account. Reading some of the stories here has brought back so much guilt and shame that I've tried not to acknowledge for nearly 10 years. Backstory: when I was 18 my mother remarried and moved out of state. I stayed in the house she owned at the time as she didn't want it to sit empty. I was working as a stripper and had dropped out of high school. Why anyone thought it was a good idea for me to be on my own is beyond me. My boyfriend at the time was the love of my life. Everything I wanted, way out of my league, but he didn't know it. He was kind, beautiful, intelligent and charming. About a year into our relationship he has some weird quarter-life crisis, where he is afraid he's missing out on life. He was homeschooled his whole life. He breaks up with me due to this fear. I'm heartbroken, but it's more complicated than that. I can't afford to live on cheaty stripper pay. I panic and start cultivating a relationship with a much older man who I know has liked me since I was a child. Oh. He moves in with me. He makes me sick, but otherwise I can't pay my bills. He finds my online diary. I know who the fuck has an online diary, and I start having to make entries pretending I love him. Fast forward a few months, get a call from ex-boyfriend. He found my online diary too, apparently looking for my email address. Reads all the shit I wrote about the other guy. He's upset. I can't tell him the truth because other guy is sitting right there. Tell him to call me back tomorrow while he's at work. Make him promise. He never calls. Some months later one of his friends knocks on my door. Tells me he died in a car accident. His exact words: "I don't know if you care or not, but XXX is dead." Nothing but venom in his words. His friends must have thought I was such a beach. I find out that he found my diary looking for my email to send me a letter. One of his friends gives it to me, full of sorries, wanting to try again. Says he loves me. My world comes crashing down. I can't function anymore. Can't eat. Can't sleep. Lay in bed for days wanting to die. Drop down to 75 lbs. Other guy is pissed off that I'm not over it. Rapes me when he thinks I'm asleep. End up having a laundry list of medical problems. Can't get a job. Can barely wake up anymore. Break my foot tripping down the stairs when I lose control of my legs. No money. No health insurance. Guy living with me can't stand me anymore. Packs up everything when I'm gone one day. I come home. House is empty. He's gone. Find out he hasn't paid bills in months. I have no bed, no fridge, no food, no money. Electricity gets shut off. Live in squalor for years. Always one bad cold from the morgue. Things are better now, but I have fibromyalgia and can't work. Will always feel it's my fault he's dead. Consider everything else my punishment for it. I'm not going to say nobody will read this, because I've read all the new comments. Someone will read it, I'm sure. So here are some things. Not sure where to even begin, so I'll just start. For reference, I'm F/21. When I was about 5, the neighbor girl across the street was about 5 years older than I was, give or take a year. One day, when I was over at her house playing, she brought me in the basement. She grabbed a washcloth and twisted it up so it was penis-like, laid on the floor, and held it over her pelvic area. She told me to sit on it, explaining sex to me. I did, and that's when I discovered what it felt like to have myself stimulated. She rocked around and rubbed on me. I don't remember much else. She did plenty of strange things growing up though. When I was about .13, I'd say I was very into anime. Well, I was also into hentai. I was also into okaki and drew all the time on oka keyboards online. Well, I had my own computer, the hand-me-down, in my room, so I drew plenty of hentai on hentai oka keyboards. Apparently, my stepdad must have been rifling through my computer history or something, or was smart enough to link the computers. I really have no idea. However, he came downstairs into my room one evening with one of my hentai drawings printed out. He comes in and shows it to me. I'm completely embarrassed and don't say anything. He asks, "Did you draw this?" I figured I was in trouble, and I wasn't much of a liar. I nodded yes. He proceeded to grab himself and start rubbing as I was sitting in my computer chair, him standing in my face. He says this is pretty good, kinda makes me hard actually, and chuckles. I've never felt nastier in my life. All 3 of my pregnancies, the first ended in a miscarriage, were planned on my part. My husband has no idea that I actually knew when I was ovulating. I faked the crying episodes of Now What Are We Going to Do? He was never against having children and is a very happy guy and loves our kids, but he was never in on them being planned. I feel bad. When I was 16, I went to a friend's party. I never liked drinking, so I was sober for the whole thing. I usually drove the drunk friends home if they needed it, so I'm not a huge buzzkill, right? Lol. Anyway, that night after most people left, the few of us who were staying the night went to the bedrooms and crashed. There was no room for me in the bedroom with my friend in it, so I went and laid in the other room. I didn't realize it only had 2 males sleeping in there though, seeing as it was pitch black, and I guess I'm too nice to flip the lights on sleeping people. I laid down on the floor and started to go to sleep until one of them wakes up, rolls over and covers my mouth. I was a little shocked at first, then assumed he was just trying to be funny, but he never did anything funny. He got on top of me, hand still on my mouth, to keep me from talking, because there was the other guy on the opposite side of me, and proceeded to take my pants and underwear off. He then inserted himself and began having sex with me. He held one of my arms down with one hand, the other still over my mouth. Being incredibly terrified, I didn't do much resisting other than squirm and mumble shit under his hand. Looking back, I don't know why I didn't just tap the guy sleeping on the other side of me. I think I was pretty embarrassed that I was letting this happen to me, or that he might try and join in. I just laid there, crying in the dark, while some guy had his way with me. To make it worse, he came inside me. I hadn't been sexually active, so I hadn't been on the pill or any form of birth control. As soon as he finished, he left. I laid there for a minute before pulling my pants up and leaving in a ridiculous, scared panic. I went home and proceeded to sit in my bathroom and sob, and eventually had to get my nasty stepdad to buy me a Plan B pill, since I didn't have $75 for it and didn't know about Planned Parenthood. I felt even nastier because I had to tell my stepdad, who didn't do anything besides buy the pill. I feel as if he got off on the story of me being taken advantage of, but that's just my guess. If you knew him, I'm sure you'd think the same thing. Later that year, I flew my online, then, boyfriend out to be with me for my birthday. Crazy, I know. Even better? He's 5 years older than me. I'd obviously never had sex with him before, until the night he got here. When that happened, he began to strangle me, spit on my face, pull my hair, in a very non-sexual way, and slap me across the face during sex. This was very scary, and I promptly sent him home. When in the process of him leaving, he threw my acoustic guitar at me, smashed my computer with it. It didn't break the computer, and attempted to go through said computer. Now, people might say how I must have hardly knew the guy, right? Wrong. I had been talking to him since I was 11, and he had been dating my friend. They broke up, and we went out for 3 years, until I finally met him face to face. The whole time I thought he was a splendid guy. Turns out he was a psychopath. He cried constantly, as well. That doesn't have much to do with it, but I found it odd. I try not to think of the shitty things in my life. I grew up in a rough household, but that isn't much of a secret to anyone. If I think of anything else I'd like to share, I'll be sure to. It's nice to get this stupid shit off my chest. My husband doesn't even know about these things. Okay, I know this is pretty much a dead thread, but I have something. When I was 13, I became friends with an 11-year-old boy who lived in my neighborhood. I was just coming to terms with my sexuality, but of course he was still too young for any of that stuff. We became close friends and we would often sleep over at each other's houses. Over the course of several months we masturbated in front of each other, mutually masturbated, and performed oral sex on one another. We also attempted anal sex with each other, but we were unsuccessful. I stopped immediately when he said it hurt. This all occurred from about May to September of 2007. That July, his father died from a heart attack. I was really the only close friend he had, and I helped him get through it, even though we were both just young boys. One day in September, I went along with him and his mother to his grandparents' house. We hung out in the den pretty much all day, and late in the afternoon, we started performing oral sex on each other underneath a blanket. His aunt walked in on us while I was going down on him, and she immediately knew what was going on. She called in his mother and both his grandparents. This was to present date, the single most humiliating moment of my life. His mom called my dad and tried to explain through her tears. They were an extremely religious family, what had happened. My dad picked me up about a half hour later and we drove home. He didn't say one word to me. I know he wasn't angry at all. I'm sure he just had absolutely no idea how to deal with what he heard. After I got home, I'm sure he explained everything to my mom, but I just went immediately to bed and cried myself to sleep. I thought everything was pretty much over. Neither of my parents had tried to talk to me about what went on. That November, we got a letter in the mail saying that my friend's mom was pressing charges against me for raping her son. You can do fact checks, but since we were both way underage, the law in my state said that I could be acquitted for rape and corruption of a minor, even though I myself was a minor. Apparently she had taken her son to a child therapist, and that he told the therapist about the anal sex we tried. She then took him to a doctor, which I'm sure she somehow got to falsify a report saying that there was evidence of forceful rape around his anal area, even though the attempted anal occurred more than 3 months prior. I read through the report that was submitted to the court, and the summary of events compiled by her lawyer was presented maliciously, with numerous fabrications and misquotes. She obviously put words in his mouth. I appeared in court in late November, and then again in late March of 2008. During both sessions, I had to describe in even more detail than I'm now the events that occurred throughout my entire relationship with my friend to a courtroom of people. This included a judge, my attorney, my mother, my friend, his mother, their attorney, and most of his family that was there the day we were caught. Sitting in the stand and telling a detailed report of my sexual awakening into a microphone was pretty damn traumatizing for me. During the time between the first 2 sessions of my trial I was placed on house arrest and was given an ankle bracelet. It was bulky and I had to try to hide it during the school day because of my embarrassment. I went nowhere but home and school for 5 months. After the second session in late March, the judge decided to have me kept in the county juvenile detention center until the date of my final hearing, which was to be determined. From that day in March until mid-April, a total of about 3 weeks, I lived in the detention center. I was treated like a criminal. The other types of kids in there had been caught with weed or had vandalized something, but my offense was so much more of an onus on me. During those 3 weeks, my mother, father, and maternal grandparents came to visit me twice for an hour each time. They are the only ones in my extended family who know what really happened. Not even my sister knows. She was 9 at the time, and my parents told her that I went on a vacation of something. I was released after the 3rd session of my trial in mid-April and was charged with corruption of minor and assault and battery of a minor. I missed a month of 8th grade during which I had dropped off the radar seemingly out of the blue. I told my friends I went on vacation. Most of them didn't buy it. I don't really blame her, knowing her background. I'm sure she was worried and confused for her son, and she was just retaliating and defending him in the best way she knew how. My record was expunged the day I turned 18. TLDR, I experimented with my 11-year-old male friend when I was 13 and was eventually caught by his aunt and went through a criminal trial during which I spent 5 months on house arrest and 3 weeks in a juvenile detention center. This was also my coming out experience. During the 3rd trial just prior to my release, the judge asked me if I identified as gay, straight, or bisexual. I said I thought I was gay, and my mom turned to me and mouthed, "Is that true?" I nodded. This is probably the most vivid memory I have. It was so embarrassing and awful, but so cathartic at the same time. If anyone knew of this, I'm sure it would definitely make people see me differently. I don't think it would ruin my life though. I truly believe I'm a stronger, better person because of what happened to me, and I used to wish that it never happened, but I don't anymore. I'm pretty happy and confident with good health and get respect from people I know. When I was a teenager, I would go out late at night and sneak into farms and fuck horses. I really wanted to do that for a long time, since I was 13 and had little interest in girls. It was really hard to get the courage to go out at first, but after a while it got to be a fairly easy thing after the adrenaline wore off. I have never had such intense orgasms before or since. I did that probably 100 times. It had nothing to do with being mean, like some therapists have asked me, and I always like to cuddle with the horses, and I left things the way I found them on the properties, so I don't know if anyone had a clue. I got into some pretty close calls, like having to sneak out after I lost track of time and the sun rose a few times, walking within a few feet of people in their houses, and even being stopped by cops while just about to go in or leaving, but they never caught on. Also one time, when I was 12 or so, I lit a fire in my school. It was inside a locker, and one kid told on me, but then he moved, so I got away with it. I stopped faking horses, but didn't stop wanting to, after getting some shit together in my life, and figuring out I didn't want my life to be ruined. After 10 years of therapy, for many reasons, not this, I came to not want to that much, and also to feel like a human being, and not a piece of shit. That required confronting my family about a bunch of shit they did to me. My mom was a crazy person, abusive, probably borderline or something, and also a mental health counselor for at-risk youth who use the system to beat me up by proxy. Stuff like starting fights with my dad or me, then having my dad help while they sat on me, breaking a bone once, totally deliberately and without any warning, having my dad punch me in the face and shove my face down in a toilet, etc. Then having me arrested for fighting back. No one in my family will back me up when I told them to either take responsibility for doing crimes on me or never talk to me again. They buy my mom's so innocent story that she never did anything wrong except by accident. A lot of them have fuck ups themselves. So, I'm happy to not talk to most of them. My girlfriend knows the story and helped me to visit my grandmother, and that required her meeting my mother once, and she told me she understands how faked up my mother is. I have only gotten more healthy and successful since I stopped having much to do with my family. Anyways, this is making me feel a little negative, and I have some friends waiting for me to go out to a club, so that's all. Okay, now I'm going to write some really faked up shit about me. This is not exactly a throwaway account, but I use this one for purposes like this. BTW, I'm a girl. I must have been a really horny kid back then. I started having sexual fantasies since I was 8. I didn't really know what was sex back then, but it was mentioned on television so much that I wanted to know more. We did not have a computer at home because my parents felt that I was too young to use one. Hence, there was no internet. I can't possibly search on such topics from a school computer, right? Only thing I could do was fantasize. When I was 10, I started to masturbate using the shower head. I don't even remember how it started, but it became a habit. I used to think I'm the only who does that kind of thing in the whole world. I didn't dare to talk about sex with anyone, not even with my friends, because it was taboo. I used to feel very embarrassed with myself, because I didn't know that everyone does it. The day I gave up my guilt was when I read about it on the newspaper in the health section. Only then I knew that it was normal and it was not wrong. My parents bought me a computer when I was 14. Still no internet though. My first porn experience came when I discovered a CD hidden inside my dad's cupboard. I was a night owl, still am, hence I slipped it to my room at night and watched it on my computer. I loved it and saved it on my computer. I was smart enough to know how to password protect a file. I used to watch it whenever I could and also think about it while masturbating. No one knew about it. I suppose my father got suspicious as he warned us, I had siblings, not to touch his things when he was not around, but he never asked about it directly. It was a close call once when I was watching the video at noon when only my younger brother and I were at home. He was taking a nap in his room, hence I watched it with the door open because if it was closed I wouldn't hear if my parents come home. The door didn't have a lock so anyone could open it. And my computer is placed such a way that it faces a door. So when I was engrossed in the porn, I didn't realize that my brother had woken up. He passed by room and saw that I watching some video. He didn't get a good glimpse. When I realized that he was there, I quickly closed the player. When he asked what was it, I lied that it was some other video that was already in the computer. After that, I deleted the files from my computer just to be safe. I used the disk instead. I didn't dare to watch porn during the day, even if I was the only one at home. One day, even the disc disappeared. It must have been my father. I finally had internet at home when I was 16. I didn't jump into porn immediately as they moved the computer in the living room. The first dirty video, though not porn, I watched from the internet was on Facebook. It was some drunk Korean star who was stripping himself at a bar. Watching it made so horny, but I still didn't dare to browse for porn. My break came when my computer broke down, and I convinced my parents to buy me a laptop. That was when I really explored porn and started reading erotica. If anyone still read this up until now, here comes the biggest secret. After I began reading erotica, incest became my favorite genre. Not only that, but any other type of porn fails to turn me. I started dreaming about sex with my family members. Though I did not feel guilty for watching porn as I knew it was normal by then, I felt disappointing with myself for allowing myself to be turned on by incest. I don't really want to involve in incest in real life, but incest porn is the only porn I'll ever watch. The story gets better when I started chatting on adult chat rooms. I indulge in virtual sex with random strangers all over the world. I was addicted to porn at one point, but I got over it. Now, I'm 18. All these years, I never told anyone that I did all this. I'm not fascinated by porn anymore. It feels normal. No one knows these things about me. Actually, if anyone found out, they will probably not believe that I did all this. Why? I was the genius at school. My grades were excellent. I did not have any discipline problem at school. I didn't even bother to get a boyfriend as I thought it was a waste of time. Hence, I'm still a virgin. Everyone who knows me admires me for my intelligence and attitude. I'm not only the good girl, but also the perfect one. I'm in a elite school, and I was voted the most likely to succeed. Hence, if anyone finds out what I do when alone, I'll be faked up. My reputation and image will be destroyed, because people always expected the best from me. But it turns out, I'm just the same as others. When I was a kid, me and my friend, who had been friends since birth because our parents who were also best friends had us 2 months apart. We did everything together, and there's rarely a picture of me when I was a kid without him in it. We were always at each other's houses and didn't separate for like the first 6 years of our lives. We always laced games together, and there was this one game we played where he was the boyfriend and I was the girlfriend. I'm also a boy. We always just thought it was a game. It's sometimes we would get naked with each other, but we never did anything like that. We were only like 8. But one day he came over my house and we started playing the game again. We were playing, and he told me to pull down my pants. So I did, and he started sucking my dick. I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was just a game. My mom walked in and subsequently flipped out, called his mom, and we didn't see each other for weeks. Fast forward 7 years, my parents getting divorced, my father driving my family into a financial hole, him becoming an alcoholic, numerous stints in rehab and in jail, my mother emotionally abusing me, and my father constantly letting my feelings down. All of these things happened in a span on like 3 years, and my life turned upside down. I was alone and constantly looking for someone to love cause no one loved me. He was still my friend, but we kind of drifted apart since I became sort of a loner in school. We were hanging out one day picking raspberries when he whipped his penis out and started jerking off. I was like, WTF dude, put it away, but I kinda didn't mean it. We went back to his house and went to his room. We were sitting there and he got his laptop and put porn on. We both started jerking off and I was looking at him the whole time. IDKY, but I remember this clear as day. Another year passes and we speak nothing of it. We grow farther apart as friends since he drinks all the time and like alcoholism is in my family. I always try to hang out with him, but his friends are such tools, they worship him since he's like the god of school. I still think about what we did as kids and I kind of like him. Like I have gay feelings about this kid. Like I thought I was straight and stuff, but I really like him, and when we don't hang out it kind of hurts. I could never tell my parents cause they'd like hate me, and his family is super Catholic and cheat. I know I've written so much, but what happened with him might have turned me gay, or if anything bisexual. All my friends and I are football players, so I could never say anything to them, or they would feel weird about me and never talk to me again. I'm just confused all the time. TLD army, and my best childhood friend had gay experiences and now I might be bisexual. So there's this guy that I've always liked. I was in middle school when we met. He played against my brother's baseball team in All Stars. I thought he was the cutest boy in the whole world. We even found out that we had the same birthday. He just seemed so cool. Ultimately, we didn't go to school together until high school. So for now he falls out of my story. I was debatably pretty weird and secretively ultra depressed throughout middle school up to senior year. It got to the point that wherever I was, I would think of ways to kill myself in that moment. If you were to ask anyone in my high school, no one could tell you I felt this way. I didn't want people to label me. I just wanted to be liked. I attempted suicide my sophomore year. I didn't tell anyone. In fact, the only people that knew were my friends that I had made online from sites like my yearbook. I even had a few online boyfriends, one that even lasted for a few years. As high school progressed, I became more well liked. I had always been pretty social, the kind of person that everyone was friends with or at least liked. I didn't have many haters. Really, my depression confused me. I felt like I had no reason to hate myself so much. I had an amazing family, well received throughout school. I guess it just came down to me being full of so much self-hatred. But I'm babbling. My senior year I was Miss High School. I was ASB president, super involved with everything. I won prom queen with the quarterback. I even won homecoming queen with the boy I told you about earlier. I'll call him Will from this point on. I had so much good in my life. I was finally escaping the shadows of depression and things seemed to be working out for me. After prom, Will and I were at a bonfire where he kissed me. He was drunk, and I was the DD, so I didn't think much about. I still had that middle school girl crush on him, but he was drunk. Later in the year we hung out and made out. We talked for a while, and then out of nowhere he just stopped talking to me. It killed me. Now, you'd think I'd learn, but I still preserve some of that lust for affection that internet boyfriends could never provide. Holding hands, kissing, sex, etc. The night before I left for college we hung out again. We confessed that we both liked each other. And we had sex. As we laid there after, we just looked into each other's eyes, memorizing every detail of the moment. He told me he wished I didn't have to leave, how he wanted to date me, how beautiful I was. Needless to say I fell hard for him again. And again, he abruptly stopped talking to me. I comforted myself by saying that I was hundreds of miles away from him. I never had to hear from him again. It's really funny how wrong a person can be. Over spring break of freshman year I saw him at a party. It was awkward at first, but we hugged and were polite. It seemed that every time I entered a room he'd leave, and vice versa. But as he gained a little more liquid courage, he came to apologize to me. I told him I forgave him. The party continued. The night had reached a point where everyone was drunk and telling stories. Will began telling a story, and it seemed that he only would look at me as he told it. Once he finished he leaned in and kissed me. In front of everyone. This was the same guy who got mad at me over telling my best friend about us having sex. I was shocked, but it felt right. It felt as if this was a night. By the end of the night Will and I had made out. He tried to have sex with me, but I told him no. I didn't want to get hurt again. So he took me outside and said that we didn't have to. He just wanted to lay with me. In an intoxicated state, this sounded delightful. As we laid there, sex eventually happened. But there was a point that I sobered up. A point where I began to panic. I asked him to get off me. I told him I'm sorry and that I just couldn't do it anymore. I just wanted so badly to be with him that I let myself believe that sex would draw us together. He wouldn't stop. He eventually torn my vagina, making sex incredibly painful. I begged him to stop and pushed him off me. After a point, I just sorta let it happen. He passed out shortly thereafter and everyone from the party had gone home. The house was cold, dark, and empty as I took my spot on the couch and began to cry. I called my best friend to pick me up, but she had class the next day, and it was 4 in the morning. I called another friend to get me, and she, just like everyone else, assumed that Will and I had sex. I only told my best friend what really happened. She was dating Will's cousin at the time, and she naturally told him. He told Will's brother, who told Will what happened. Will had no memory of the night. Will began to freak out. He began to cry. He frantically called my best friend to explain that he was sorry and that he never wanted to hurt me. He loved me. He cared about me. I ignored his calls. He finally resorted to text messages in which I replied that I had forgave him and to not do this to another girl ever again. I don't know why, but I never considered the fact that Will raped me, and I think it's because I have so blindly fallen in love with him. I guess I had more of a story to tell than I thought. I know that no one will take the time to read this. I know I wouldn't. If anyone does, please comment or upvote or whatever. This is a total throwaway, and by no means do I intend to karma hoe or whatever. I guess I just want to know how many people know my secrets now. It feels so freeing letting it all out. TLDR, just another rape story. Edit. Clarification. I'm tired. All of the time. I hear voices. All of the time. I have urges, incentives to kill people. Not all of the time, but on the background, in certain voices inside of me. I'm tired, always. I want to be a man who claims his place, becomes independent and have a life. Becomes in a place that I can have my own actual goals and succeed in on a normal level. I want brothers. People I can just hang out with and dick around with like a normal person, or get that same kind of feeling from it. I want to learn and study and try and make it somewhere without worrying about depression and complete breaks in reality. I think this is what I want, but I also strongly think it's because it steps toward being different. In reality, I want to live in a world that I can do these things, give in to sadist man murder and just all my dark, vivid, real fantasies and voices and thoughts, and not give a fuck. I do think I want to go to a therapist or psychiatrist in focusing on getting ahead in life without thinking to myself how this will never work. I'm in a suburb and getting into mental health is impossible. Even expensive 150 plus a week is still a week. Deep down I know I need to be in a long-term facility. I know I'm dangerous to everyone, even and especially myself. I not only am knowledgeable of how I could kill someone, I find that a part in my head wants it in a way that's difficult to describe. Like a lust to actually cut someone open. Sadistic is the right word. But I also know I'll never seek help. I'll never seek help because there is no help to be found. People don't take this. And all psychological communities do for you is keep you on record. This could destroy my life. I will not afford to be taken down and dismissed or thrown off into a permanent institution. I don't have any money for it, and the ones that are essentially government sponsored are worse than many prisons and follow with them notorious abuse and criminal behavior from staff. In America you need money to get help, and you need a persona to get far. You need to have a place of brutality and a place where you can look at someone, be confident, and pretend all is absolutely fine. You need to win. I want to have people to talk to work through. But no one knows any of this, and sometimes it's as if I'm staring across a huge expanse and I can't find anything on the other side. I feel alone. The most impacting of any kind of work or anything substantial I've come across that has struck my life has been the series Dexter. In the first season, for the first time in my life, I felt like I saw someone who was just like me. I wish there were more people just like me. Edit. I need to go in on this because it's getting me. I look at things, Ted Bundy, I see the sickest and facts, and twisted as, and I just know I could come to such a solid place with them. There's this strong connection I feel with people who normal people look at and dismiss as immoral and crazy and sick. I don't feel connected in their actions or infamously, but in their eyes. I can see it in their eyes. It rolls, for me, right back into me being the same, to finding brethren, the same as me. At most times I feel vividly, as if I'm a vividly normal person life out in a world of complete aliens, me and them. There's a huge bit of me that is always so different from the world, and I want, really on a point of longing, to see someone, some other sick fuck bond, and find them, just like me, on the other side, and just look at them, even just once. I'm sick of always playing it on a mask, the fear of always hiding. I'd give my life to see someone on the same side of the coin just like me. But even internet is monitored, nothing isn't anymore. How do you even begin to find them? When I was homeless with one of my really good longtime friends, we'd always steal a bunch of wine from the grocery store and get drunk around town to pass time. One of these days, and about 3 bottles in, we meet a couple of girls on the bike path who want to join us. We joke with them, and they ask for some drink. They looked somewhat young but passable, so we asked them what their ages were just in case. Contributing to minor sucks when you have no money, and they said 18 and 19. They looked believable, so we spent the day with them, jolly and whatnot. They weren't old enough to drink, but they were old enough to fuck, and that's all we were really thinking. As it gets darker, one friend leaves and the other stays with us. We are all sheet-faced at this point as I had just stole 3 more bottles. We lost our corkscrew, so ended up bashing the bottlenecks and drinking from what had become large glass shivs. She starts to make out with both of us right on the side of the river, and we're all getting horny. I look to my mans and we both give each other the drunken go eyes. So we convince her to come with us to a field to lay in to sober up. He jabs his dick in her mouth as I pull her pants down and start raucously pounding her from behind. She says no a couple times, but I didn't really care. I can hear her crying, and then my buddy and I switch sides. I look at her face and she's sobbing as she's giving me fella shio in this muddy field. I don't know how my drunk self didn't connect with this human in need at that moment, but I became a demon and gagged her out with my dick as she kept crying and saying no. We ended up picking her up without finishing and started walking to our buddy's house nearby who had a phone. She was crying that bad. All 3 of us covered in mud and visibly drunk crossed a nearby street where cops happened to see us with a giant as half-drank bottle of wine. They lit up and pulled into the parking lot we were crossing at. I dropped the bottle out of fright and it shattered. Instantly arrested. After talking with the cops as much as I could, we found out that the girl was 15 and had lied about her name and everything. I spent a couple days in jail. She never pressed charges. No one ever said anything. Me and my buddy never talk about it to this day. I have never told this to anyone and I'm shaking. I really felt like I was scum who deserved to die the next morning. I've never really fully recovered. I did not expect this kind of response. I mostly just wanted an anonymous release to help forgive myself. Believe me, I hate myself just as much for this as you guys, if not more. Thank you all for providing honest responses. It's been heavy on my soul for last few years and I have had no closure from it whatsoever. If it's any consolation, all of my relationships have failed since and my life pretty much sucks. I believe that we are all on this planet learning, and some lessons harder than others. I have 2 younger sisters rapidly approaching her age, and all I can say is please talk to the young ladies in your life and be there for them. Make sure they don't end up in any situation like this at all. Forgive me. I'm you, just another human, and I had my dance with the devil.